The following program deals with a controversial
subject.
The theories expressed are not the only possible interpretation.
The viewer is invited to make a judgment based on all available information.
the top talents in the comic book business are here to tell everything they know.
Oh,
No, I'm just joking, you guys. I got it right tonight.
I was going to say. All right. Very, very cool. I thought you were doing a Jackie Chan thing right there.
No.
Right.
Welcome, everybody, to another Tuesday night here on Beyond Wednesdays for the Industry of Comics show. I'm here with my compadres, Jesse and Dennis, and we got an excellent show tonight, you guys. A wonderful bunch of topics. We got Filip Sablik from Ignition Press. Swaggle House is going to join us, and then of course we'll bring on at some point in the night we'll bring on Emmett from Haven for Heroes. He'll jump on with us. We're going to talk about of course Ignition Press's launch is getting ready. I mean they're getting ready, and we have a launch update, and we're going to get into that. Filip's speech was one of the standouts at ComicsPro from everything that we've heard. And I think that's usually kind of the case whenever he gives a speech at any event. He's one of those guys that does a good job at that stuff. So, and then of course, Mickey was there. We kind of got into a little bit of it with Mickey back a week ago, but we wanted to save most of it for tonight. So we're going to get
That's
into
right.
that.
I want to get it Mickey tonight. God damn it.
So how you guys doing? How was your week this week?
I'll go first. It's good to be Dennis. You know, I sit there and I watch this industry and I'm just like, man, I wish I could have done this. I wish I could have done that. But I'm just so glad that I insulated myself like I did. We had so many new customers over the weekend. There was supposed to be some kind of boycott, I think, on Friday or Saturday. And it was like a record sales day.
Well, that boycott was to help stores like yours. So I think they boycotted big stores, right? Something like that.
Yeah. And, you know, it's just phenomenal that that's the kind of motivation that people need to remember that there's these other levels below the Walmart and the Amazon. Yeah. And it works.
Amen. Jesse, how about you? How was your week?
So first of all, I want to state that I did make a statement and I'm going to stand behind it. A comic book store closed on Friday, not understanding why they were supposed to be open on Friday, and they were trying to make a political point. Don't make political points with your stores, folks. No. Sell comics, take care of your customers. Amen. My weekend was awesome. My week has been great. My year has been great. If Brian didn't call me, though, I would have never got up because I am burnt out. Folks, you're buying too many books from me. Continue to buy a whole bunch of books, but the staying up to 3:30, 4 a.m. selling you books, that's going to have to change. I think we're going to stay up to like 2:30 and make it even. But the great thing about my week, and the greatest thing, I was scarred back in the day when this happened.
Oh, I know.
Yep. I was scarred for life. I will tell you, there's my sergeant. Thank you, John Cena, for turning. You are now the bad guy of the comic book or of the wrestling world forever. So, Sergeant Slaughter, you're back in. I will never have to worry about that ever again. I am unscarred. John Cena, I could care less what happens with you, even though that was great acting.
It was. I even saw
my gosh.
Yeah.
Was that crazy?
Yeah.
It's like you could see the evil in his face when it was amazing acting. So
I'll say it. I'll say it right now. Wow, John Cena can actually act.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyways, great week. Slinging Comics is, no matter what happens in the comic book world, you got to sling. Slinging solves everything.
Amen. All right, let's bring in our guests, ladies and gentlemen. Filip Sablik and Swaggle House join us tonight. How's it going, gentlemen?
Good, fellas. Good to see you.
Yeah.
It's going well. Always a pleasure to get the invite on the industry show. So anytime you guys reach out, I gotta always make an appearance. So I gotta be here, and
we have to hang out with combos.
Swag, is it validating? Because I'll tell you, I'll just start with, it's validating to hear when Swagg does an episode and all of a sudden he shouts out me and Jesse coming on his show and basically spelling out how the next 2 months are going to happen while everybody else is saying, oh, this is going to do this and this is going to do that. And it's like, no, just go back to Swagg's video. We told you exactly everything that was going to happen for the next 2 months.
It's like you got a couple of Nostradamuses over here.
I know,
but I guess
right?
if you can read if you can just read the tea leaves and you've been doing what you guys have been doing for as long as you've been doing it, it's not necessarily a prediction so much as it is.
Yeah,
this is just where the chips are falling.
Well, right. And I'll go one step further. I predicted that there was going to be one breakout speech at ComicsPro because I know when the certain guy puts his heart and mind to a speech, it's going to be the best damn speech anybody's ever heard. And that person was Filip Sablik over at ComicsPro.
You're making me uncomfortable, man. We've talked.
I know.
I swear to God, if you guys know
right off the bat, you got.
I need the tennis shoe. I need the tennis shoe speech on like my daily affirmation, list. That tennis shoe speech was single-handedly one of the best speeches I ever heard at a comic retailers meeting.
Thank you. Yeah, I you know what? I think a lot of it is just putting in some time and effort and caring about how you use that time, as I've talked with you guys about this in the past, I've really talked to anybody that'll listen to me. It's like that time is an opportunity to talk about why you're doing what you're doing as a publisher, right? More than talking about the product, because retailers can read and retailers have access to information. And so if you're not talking about something bigger than that, I feel like it's just not the best use of time.
I think that's an important thing to talk about is retailers and their access to information, because I think that game has changed rapidly and we talk about it all the time. Whereas, it's gone from being something that, maybe Diamond would send out newsletters or, they would look in magazines and stuff, to now it's social media and YouTube content. And, it's not even as much websites anymore. I feel like there's very few websites that actually keep up on the industry as much anymore. So it's a rapidly changing information age in the world of the comic retailer.
Yeah, one of the things we were kind of polling retailers on was how they wanted to get information, right? And Jesse and Dennis will get this joke. Like the old joke about going to a retailer conference in the comic industry is you ask 15 retailers for their opinion and you'll get 20 different opinions.
Yeah.
But we were polling
and
them.
you'll get 5 different fax machine numbers to send it to.
Yeah.
That's gotten a little bit better, but we were
only 3 now. Okay, got it.
Exactly. We were asking them, like, how would you like information? And we kind of proposed to folks, look, I think a lot of the way that the industry communicates information comes down to inadequate planning, right? And this kind of tendency to make your poor planning somebody else's emergency, right? And so it's like, hey, we didn't have this ready when we announced this project, so here it comes at 5 minutes before the FOC bell rings. Take a look at it now, right? And one of the things we had proposed to some of the retailers is, look, our intention is to have everything ready and available for you when we announce. So you can, if you want to, you can make a decision day one on what you're going to order and how you're going to support it. And if you want to wait until FOC and kind of like gauge what your customers are doing, that's great too. And so what we had suggested was, what if we just have a place where here's a Dropbox and you can come in and you can get everything you need whenever you need it, And actually, I'm curious. I got 2 retailers in front of me right now. I know you guys are doing less with new comics now, but I just, curious what your reaction to that is.
Yeah, I think one of the things I love your direct to customer infomercials that you're then be doing. I think that's very, very important. But I also think that should be set in the selling process to a retailer as well, where they are able to maybe not be able to pick up that phone every time they have a question, but see these infomercials that come out. A prime example is ComicsPro is over. So if you talk to 100 or 200 retailers or whatever it is, how are you talking on Monday to the other 1,200 that didn't go? And I think
1,000.
that's very, very important, that the information is streamlined constantly so that a retailer can make that decision on what is important to me every day when I wake up. Because usually, what is it? It's you go to your well, if you have stock, you then go to your stock, you then go to your bank account. Well, okay, but when you get into the comic book world, what are those top 5 publishers that I'm going to look for information? Oh, I'm going to look at information to the ones that are actually sending information that actually matters. So I think a daily rhythm versus saying, well, Wednesday to Wednesday, FOC to FOC, I think that's more important.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in opting in, right? Trying to streamline and opt in. Like, if you're interested in Ignition Press, I want you to have all the information you need at any given point, and also have the ability, to your point, Jesse, to have those conversations. If you have a question, it's like, hey, I got the information you sent. What do you mean by this? Or can I clarify that? You know, having an infrastructure in place where you can respond to people and answer questions. Because ultimately, you know, managing it is a challenge, but at the end of the day, you're talking about having a business relationship with, you know, whatever it is, 1,000, 1,200, 1,500, 1,800, 2,000 accounts, right? And so you have to be responsive to what their needs are.
Philip, let me throw some water on that. Do you actually think there's 1,800 to 2,000 accounts right now?
I do. I don't think all of them are potential Ignition customers. You know, the data, you know, and again, this is dated, so take it with a grain of salt, but, you know, I would say Boom's market penetration was probably 1,400 stores when I left, right? And I think that there are probably 1,800 accounts that are ordering some comic product, right? Whether it's graphic novels or comics, and some of those accounts may only be ordering, you know,
the club
Batman,
accounts.
Spider-Man, you know, Transformers, whatever the big brands are at that given moment. Not everybody's going to be a full line comic shop.
And a lot of those are online retailers too. And I think that we, especially with Dennis and Jesse, sometimes they forget that when we say, you know, accounts total, that it's not all brick and mortar shops, right? I mean, that's an important thing to remember too.
Yeah. So I think it depends on like what level you are in the marketplace, right? And what your product offerings are. Even, you know, taking a step back and looking at like my experience at Boom had existing pre-branded material. You know, there's going to be a wider immediate audience when you're publishing Power Rangers and WWE and Buffy the Vampire Slayer than when you are coming to the market with a brand new original piece of content that you're building from the ground up.
And that is one of your main things at Ignition Press, is that creator-driven originals, which is such important. It's something that we've talked about many times over on this channel, is how important it is to have those new titles, those new ideas out there, trying something fresh and new, and you know, keeping that going rather than, you know, the same old rigmarole every day. But you really hit that on the head with you know, that your speech and some of the stuff that you talked about, those creator-driven originals. Can you talk a little bit about some of the things that you have on the docket that you can, you know, tell us about?
Yeah, I mean, because again, Jesse, to your point, not everybody was at ComicsPro, not everybody saw that speech. Certainly not everybody that's, you know, watching the show now or will be watching the show later. So Ignition's mission and what we're trying to do is we're going to be focused on exclusively producing original content with the creators that we partner with. And one of the things that I said at ComicsPro is we need those established brands. Like the average comic shop knows that they're going to make their rent based on Batman on this week, Spider-Man on that week, Transformers on another week, whatever the big brands are. But for the industry to continue to grow, for the medium to continue to grow, our perspective is that you need that next Walking Dead, you need the next Boys, you need the next Saga, you need the next Something's Killing the Children. That's what continues to kind of refresh things, right? And typically publishers are going to have a mix of those things because they either need the stability and the cash flow that those proven brands provide, or they're hoping that those brands, because of the recognition that they have, will then have a halo effect on the other stuff that they're doing, right? Like I'm going to bring in Power Rangers customers and fans and then try to convert those into some of the other things that we're doing and turn them into Boom fans, or we've got Transformers and we're going to try to turn them into Skybound fans. And fortunate enough to be in a position where we don't have to do that, right? Where we can just focus on original content, which is a harder road to walk, but ultimately it's for us more creatively exciting and interesting, right? And so the way that we approach things was, if we have Ignition right now is a logo, it's literally like it's this symbol. It doesn't mean anything yet, and hopefully over time it will. The properties that we're going to be launching don't exist yet. They're going to be brand new ideas. So when I looked at that, I said, okay, well then the brands that we have are the creators we work with, right? And historically in comics, certainly I think, post early 90s, when the Image founders split off from Marvel and founded Image, those two things have been bifurcated, right? Because the lesson that Marvel and DC broadly, and this is reductive, took from that was, we can't promote creators anymore because we're creating the competition, right? And there's always a danger that the next Todd McFarlane and the next Rob Liefeld is going to go, you know what, I'm going my way. And so, basically for 30 years, we've been in a mode where publishers promote projects and creators promote their brands, right? And the challenge there is that we identified is, if you're a publisher, that means that you can't promote a project until you announce it. And ideally, you're not announcing a project until your retail partners can order it. Mm-hmm. So now everybody is in the same 2-month sprint to raise awareness for a thing that didn't exist 5 minutes ago, and then convert customers to purchase that thing, right? And one of the things I said to the room was, the fact that comic marketing professionals get anything to hit is kind of a miracle when you think about that timeline, because you have all these, how many, I know somebody counted it recently, how many publishers are there in the space, how many projects are there in the space, right? Like in any given month, to have, it's a fire hose, right? And y'all are on the receiving end of it, both as fans and as content creators and as retailers, right? And so everybody's in the same sprint. And in the meantime, the creators are over here trying to build their brands, but they're freelancers, right? And the comic book industry generally is set up so that if you're a writer, you're having to place projects at different publishers and promote those, simultaneously to make a living. And so they don't have the resources they need to really build brands outside of essentially just preaching to the choir, right? And so, one of the points we made was like, it's no wonder historically as an industry, we've had such a problem actually bringing in new potential fans, right? There's not enough time. The resources aren't leveraged in the right place. And so our proposition was essentially, well, what if we back the creators? What if instead of waiting until the project is announced to start promoting, I sign a deal with Cullen Bunn and I develop a marketing strategy and an advertising strategy that is built around growing Cullen Bunn's audience and creating a
that's kind of the
around
cross-gen model, isn't it? A little bit.
I would argue a piece of it, but the main difference here, I think, in that example is CrossGen was still building a universe, right? It was CrossGen first, creator second.
Got it.
Right.
Yep.
And
you're going to be building multiple universes in different spaces.
I want Cullen Bunn to have a community and a fan base that is excited about him, that'll support him, whether he's doing his, Lovecraftian superhero comic universe or his little weird haunted house story, or if tomorrow Cullen wakes up and says, I want to do a romance story, right? Part of this idea really stems from, I think, an experience we've all had, whether it's been in a comic shop or at a convention, right? Which is meeting a creator and having that interaction with them and having a great experience creates fans for life, right? There are people and we could all in this room, I think, list off yep, here's my list of top 5 creators that I had an interaction and I will walk through fire, right?
Yeah.
For that person. Jesse, you were, before we came on, you were talking about how, you're on board with Ignition, but a lot of that is our relationship, right?
Yeah.
And that brand loyalty.
That's what I was going to say, is I support, and I always have supported, a publisher that I know is thinking outside the box. And when Ross and you did that Prove Bill Wrong initiative at that retailer summit, I was like, I had no idea who you were. I was already ordering your books, but I was like, wait a second. These guys are they're going to try for something. That is something I can get behind. And the stuff that came out of that.
Credit where credit's due. Prove Bill Wrong was Ross and Chip.
That's right.
That predates me, but
that's right.
But yes, look, we did all sorts of stuff at Boom. I think that over that time period that reinforced that idea.
I think that is probably it's even, speaking of reinforcing that idea, the current social media content creator world has really reinforced that to where and Swag, you'll be able to agree with this too. In my world of the content creator and social media, most people, they watch it for the information, but they fall in love with the host or the people doing and that they follow those hosts, and it just seems so obvious.
Can I rephrase what you're saying?
Yeah, of course.
So let me rephrase this. Coming from corporate, this is how I was listening to you, Philip. You said preaching to the choir. Well, preaching to the choir throughout our history has been distributors, ICB2, Bleeding Cool, local comic book store, Diamond, whatever it is. But we are in the world of the content creator now. So how does that change? And Swag, you can get into this conversation as well. How does that change how you do get that information out? And how do you create that relationship with the Swag and his channel as well? So both companies are talking about the same thing.
Oh, I guess I'll take the ball run with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you guys are saying. I mean, I've said this in various versions, maybe even on this show before, or in other videos that I've done, where I've spoken to the ether or the cosmic comic world and kind of shouted out, if you're a comic creator now, whether you like it or not, you need to be an influencer. You need to be on these shows, you need to come on, and you need to start shaking hands and kissing babies, because to what you're saying, Philip, is you can write amazing stories. And frankly, there's tons of amazing comic books that are out there right now, but there's just so much noise, and it's the same discussion. We just had the Oscars, and the guy who won the speech for Honora was talking about the plight of indie filmmaking. And it's the same thing that they're going through, where it's there's a ton of indie filmmakers that are making indie films, but nobody watches them and it can't really break through. And, you know, I'm equating that to like sort of original IP, you know, here as you guys are kind of breaking into it. Like, how do you get through this noise and of everything that you're competing with in the entertainment space? And the reality is, it's very difficult to just sell the story on the story's pitch alone compared to the person who is telling the story. And if you can sell the person, people who are willing to give that person a chance. And this kind of goes to what you're getting at with like the creator model, where it's if Cullen Bunn wants to write something, well, I'll write with Cullen Bunn, you know, like I don't care what you're going to write. I'll just buy it because I like you. And so, and that's kind of the world we sort of live in today. And I think I liked how you're talking about, as a publisher, you're investing more into the creators than you are, say, into the, I don't know, titles. It's more on them than it would be in the titles. And I think that that's really what it's going to need in order to kind of break through, you know, moving forward. But
it reiterates what I've been saying, though, also. When you watch, and I love paralleling the comic industry with the music industry, but when you watch, and I just listened to Billy Corrigan on Joe Rogan today, and he actually brought this up in the middle of that thing. When everybody in the music industry came on the other side of the Napster debacle, the crash of the music industry, they all had to take a serious look at what they wanted to do. And they either decided to go one direction or another. And that pivotal year or two during Napster crash was instrumental in creating half of the giants that came out of that. You have to invest in the content. You can't just be, oh, I'm with this label, I'm with that label. You had to be a superstar on stage after that if you wanted people to pay money to listen to you.
Yeah, I think part of this is, you know, we've gone from living in a monoculture to living in a bunch of niche cultures, right? Which is very familiar for those of us that are comic fans, right? Because we've always been in a niche space. The wonderful thing about that is the barrier to, you know, create a community or a group of fans is lower than it's ever been. You know, the flip side of that, Swag, to your point, is like the competition is greater than it's ever been, because essentially, like, good news, you know, you've got some determination, some drive, and, you know, the internet, you can go do a thing. Bad news, so can everybody else, right? And so I think one of the big things here is that people connect with other people. They connect with why you do things. And as a consumer, both in the kind of the financial sense and in as a consumer of media, you also want to get value, right? Like, if you look at what you guys do on each of your, you know, on your respective channels, you are providing value, right, to the person that is consuming the content. And so that's another big thing is, you know, because of the way that the direct market has been structured, essentially most of the time when creators historically are engaging with their fans, it's with their hand out saying, money please, buy my thing, right? And one way you can get around that is by expanding the timeline, right? So to use Colin as an example, because we announced him at ComicsPro, it's like we are developing his brand strategy now, his content strategy, and our focus is, how do we deliver value for the people that you're inviting into your community, right? You are a horror writer. How do we make your channels something that people who love horror want to participate in and want to engage in? So that by the time you show up and you say, hey, I've been working on this new thing and I'm really excited about it, you don't have to ask them to spend money on it because they want to, right? They're excited to do it because they've bought in. I think that's a big piece of it. And part of where this also stemmed from is when we were starting this thing, I remember sitting there and talking, you know, with Jamie and Jeremy, and Jamie was saying, you know, back in the day when he was at Oni in like the late 90s and the early 2000s, the strength of the direct market was that they knew that once they had established that little beachhead in the direct market, they could publish virtually anything, and there were 2,000 people that were going to buy it, right? And so as long as you kept your costs controlled, you could kind of run that play indefinitely, right? I think we're coming to an end of that era. You know, there's too much content available, and the strength of the direct market has always been that it's stable, that it's this bedrock that you can count on, right? But I think if we look at the last 20 years, you know, the industry as a whole has continued to kind of tap into that. You know, like Brian, I know you've said on this channel a bunch, it's like people get burnt out because they feel like, man, they just like they keep trying to squeeze more blood out of this stone, you know, as opposed to replenishing it and revitalizing it. And so that's one of our goals, you know, is like, how do we bring people in?
You
how do
have
we
a track record of also not exploiting that, because it would have been real easy to make 2 other Something Is Killing the Children spinoffs, and you didn't. You said focus on this main thing.
Yeah, it's tempting. It's tempting when you got to, and you know, when you got to figure out how to make those numbers for any given quarter or a year. And again, like, you know, oftentimes I think outside looking in, people look at that and go like, oh man, they're like just doing it because they can. But the reality is, you know, 9 times out of 10 at these publishers, it's like, I'm doing it because I haven't invested in a longer term strategy, and I need to make these numbers so that I can continue taking care of my staff. You know, you guys have heard, you know, Nikki on the show talking about, yeah, like I have a responsibility to the people that I employ to make sure that they can pay their rent, they can make their mortgage, and how do I do that? And you know, the lovely thing about starting with a white sheet of paper is you don't have that inertia where you have to like
and zero
solve
baggage.
that problem.
And zero baggage.
So let me ask you this. So how do you open those channels, or are you going to create those channels?
I think more the latter. It's about, look, we recognize there are all these overlapping groups of fandoms, right? There are people that love the genres, that love the types of stories and the artwork and all these elements that make up comics, right? There are all these adjacent fandoms that are there and need an easy way to come in, right? And the most obvious way that we've seen this over the last 20 years is like when you have something like a Walking Dead and the TV show takes off and it's a cultural moment, you know, those people come in that have never read comic books before. You know, it you know, happens with things like The Boys. It happened with, and it doesn't even have to be a movie or a TV show, right? Like it happened with Sandman years ago, right? There were all these fans that were coming in that hadn't been in comic shops before. And so I think in terms of what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to meet those fans where they are and add value for them, right? So the example I'll use is this past week we helped working with Jeremy Hahn, who's one of our co-founders. We launched a YouTube channel for him called Curious Haunts, and it's about, he describes it as I'm going to be a nerdy horror obsessed Anthony Bourdain, and I'm like, my channel is about me going interesting places and going to like spooky, creepy hotels and bars and oddity shops and things that I'm really into.
Drop next time you talk to him.
Thank
tell
you,
him
Brian.
I have a haunted movie theater full of comic books.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That is a great idea to do this, and I think that's again it's one of the most important things to do when you're starting something off like this, is to start something like this, like a home base or something, to create that fandom, that fan base, to follow something, right? So,
yeah,
great idea.
Well, I think the key is not follow something, be part of
Be
something.
part of something. That's
People,
it.
yeah, people want to be part of something. They can go join whatever they want, but if they feel they're a part of something,
Yes.
that's what engages a customer to watch a show or to go out and buy products. So very important that when we're speaking in the sales realm, that people love being part of something.
Yeah.
You know, to that point, and these are two words that, you know, we've all said many times before, but community and authenticity, you know, those are the two words, right? Those are the like if you were to go into like a marketing class and study like, okay, what was marketing of, you know, the last like 20 years, and what was the marketing before the last 20 years before that, and what is marketing today? It's like the millennial brand of marketing was like, oh, the brand is this thing, and we kind of dictate to like what the audience is, and here's who we are. We say to you what that is. And now it's sort of in this, I mean, I'll go there. It's like this Gen Z style of where it's like, oh, people just want this connection, this human community connection that feels raw and authentic. And that's really where anyone who's doing these types of things like the YouTube channel or talking to your audience or having them be less of your fans and being more of your community is really what it is. I'll share a quick little story. You know, when we did the Evermind Kickstarter, I remember Sean Chen, you know, he was the artist that drew it, and we went to like a con, and I was just kind of asking him like, oh, how's the con experience? Like, you know, he's signing books for people, and he's giving it out, and he's like, oh, you know, it was fun, but like, you know, it's just felt kind of weird because like, you know, it just everyone who came to my booth were just like my friends, you know, that just were kind of wanting to buy my own book, and I wish I was selling it to like, you know, people who I don't know, and it's sort of like, see, but that's the mentality you actually need to shift.
Yes.
Is like literally everyone who supports you should just be your friend. Like
Right.
that's sort of the relationship now that we're kind of moving into. And
Right.
Well, but that's a big base though. You shouldn't be disappointed with that, because we came from the Inkenstein area here in Michigan, where it was Peterson and Katie Cook and Jeremy Bastian. Those all guys were nobody. They just started getting around with each other. Jay Fosgett was part of that. And they were all just drawing at a bar. And then one of them would get a book, and they'd all come out to that signing. Nothing is more detrimental for a creator than nobody coming out for a signing. You know, but every one of those guys showed up to every one of those guys' signings.
Yeah.
In some way, shape, or form. And that built their community.
Right.
And that builds their brand.
That's
well, and that's another like example of like, why do bands, when they're starting off, always insist that all their friends show up to their shows, right? And the reason is nothing draws a crowd like a crowd.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and you guys have probably seen it at signings too, right? If you have a line out the door, that's going to dramatically increase the likelihood that you're going to have a good signing, because the minute somebody sees like, oh, there's a line for that, what is that for? Should I be in that line?
Yeah
exactly. There was a changing point in retail around 2001 2002, and it actually hit universally, where even the companies I was with at the time, they were training it for everybody. And basically what it was for decades we told people what to buy. Now we're in the world to listen to what they want. And that's the direction that we've gone. So socially, branding, personalities, authentic, like Swagg said, it all comes to like this common sense arena that we're in. Philip, I do want to ask you, can you explain what you were talking about, the cold open? What can you explain that to the audience, please?
Yeah. So, I'll take a half step back and just kind of like finish one thought from earlier, which is like, if the old model was, here is a market that has a core fan base, and if I can just connect with that core fan base, I'm just going to rinse and repeat, right? I think what that allowed publishers to do, broadly speaking, is the Field of Dreams approach, right? Where it's like, if I build it, they will come, right? And essentially, you know, I think I talked about this the last time I was on. I felt when I was looking at it, I felt like the typical independent publisher plan was showing up and going like, I have some creators you've heard of. Here's a cool idea. Dennis, Jesse, can you please sell this product to your customer base, right? And essentially, what's kind of embedded in that is like, can you please convince your customers to buy my book instead of some other guy's book, right? Which again results in everybody fighting over the same piece of pie. So like, I think we are moving into a phase where that's not going to be good enough, you know, that like publishers are going to have to show up and say like, I have a go-to-market strategy that adds value to my retailer partners business, right? And not all of those are going to be successful, but you have to have a plan and you have to have an approach. And so one of the, you know, if phase one for us is building the creator brands and nurturing a community outside of the endemic audience that's already going into stores, then phase three is like, how do you bridge that gap, right? Because one of the other big challenges with the direct market is you have, again, whether we're talking about 1,000 locations or 1,800 locations, the challenge remains the same, which is as the publisher, it's a big ask to go to somebody who does not buy comic books and say, hey, can you go to this destination store, which may or may not be near you, and either go 3 months in advance and pre-order something, or show up on the day of, and I can't guarantee that the thing's going to be there, right?
You know,
like,
but Philip, you know, that's one of the things we're sitting here on the precipice of the direct market earthquake. We were talking about earthquakes before the show. We're right now in the middle of the biggest earthquake the direct market's ever faced. I think it's bigger than the 90s crash. We got to start thinking of some outside the box things. And I was talking to somebody after I dropped my last video, and I kind of left kind of a plot hole dangling in that video. And they were like, hey, what is the new way of doing things? And we were kind of flushing it out. And I'll throw this out to you right now as just another one of my ideas that came up through discussion. Why don't they sign up with you and you tell me how many people want to buy from me as part of the ordering process? You be the hub for your books.
Right. Well, I think that dovetails really nicely into the cold open and kind of what we're trying to do, right? So the way we looked at it was people will sign up for free content, 10 to 1 versus people that will actually spend money on content, right? It's easy to sign up for a newsletter. It's easy to subscribe to a YouTube show, because ultimately there's no cost to it, and you can quit if you don't like it, right?
Yep.
So, if in theory we've opened up this funnel, the sales funnel, and we've got more people, potential people, the next thing we have to do is we have to make it easy for them to engage with the end product. And so our solution for that was offering direct to consumer these cold open issues, and essentially it's a reimagined issue 0, right? But as opposed to being kind of like, traditionally I think in the comic market, and you guys have probably read more issue 0s than I have in my life, but like typically my memory was
too many.
An issue 0 was kind of like, oh, there's an opportunity here to sell some extra copies. So like, what's the story in between the story? Like, here's this deleted scene from something, or, here's like a extra layer to an origin story. The way that we reconceptualized it was like the cold open to a James Bond film, right?
Oh yeah.
And Swag, I know you come from, like a film and TV background, right? So this is like cold open is a really known concept, right? It's the idea that here's the scene that's going to happen before the opening credits. And why I love James Bond as an example is if you go back and you watch those movies, 9 out of 10 of those cold opens have nothing to do with the main storyline. They're there to establish this is James Bond. He's a super spy. He drives fast cars. He drinks martinis. He loves pretty girls.
And the cold
he's got a
open
license
didn't
to
have
kill.
to have James Bond every time, too.
Right, but there was something about, like, it was setting up the world, right? It was setting up the stakes. It was inviting you in, but it was satisfying as a vignette, right? Like it had a beginning and a middle and an end, right? And so that's what we went to the creators with. We said, we'd like you, in addition to this main story that you've pitched us, to do like a typically it'll be 12 pages, but it might be in some cases a little bit more. Give us a vignette that like sets up the world that you want people to get invested in. And our idea is we would offer that, we're going to offer that out to the, Cullen Bunn fans or the Jeremy Hahn fans and say, click here. In some cases it'll be through a crowdfunding platform like Kickstarter. In some cases it's going to be direct through a website. In some cases it might be at an event, where we know that there's going to be a gathering of those fans that we're trying to connect with. It might be on a live stream, it might be on a social channel that allows people to order. But the main idea is offering it to that community that we built in a way that is as frictionless as possible, right? And then delivering that product. And again, it's a physical comic book, right? Because one thing we want people to do is to actually interact with the end product we want them to buy, right? Yeah. So we don't want to do digital because, like, ultimately I want people picking up the physical book, right? I want them falling in love with that. And so they'll order it, and then within 8 weeks we will have it shipped to their door. If it's at an event, it'll be right there so that they can get it. And when they get to the end of the story, then you hit them with the educational materials inside the book that is like, this is what a comic shop is. This is how you find one. This is our list of, dedicated stores that are ignition stores, right? That are going to be carrying our product. Here's how you pre-order, and what that process looks like. And by the way, if you're the kind of person that doesn't want the long boxes that are behind Jesse right now, and you don't want to read in chapter form, or you don't want the physical product, here are the alternatives, right? If you don't have a comic shop near you, you can order it online from a comic shop. You can go to this digital provider. If you want to wait until it's all collected, here's what the timeline looks like, that, right? And ease them into it. And then to your point, Dennis, my theory is at that point, because we have engaged directly with that audience and they've opted in and they've given us their information, I can go to you and I can say, hey, this is how many people like this thing that are in your area, and I know who they are, and I'm driving them to your store. Now base your orders off that, right?
So would there be an option for that individual to have that book sent to the store for pickup?
We haven't talked about that. That may be a little logistically complex to start off with, but I think what we have said to retailers is, look, we're not looking to sell to your customer, right? In other words, if you wanted the cold open and you wanted to take pre-orders for that and place an order with us, great. We will ship to you direct. We'll sell to you at wholesale. But again, I think there's the logistics of having them pick it up there, but also we've shortened now the distance between awareness and conversion, but you're still making them do that destination drive for that first purchase, which right. I think for a lot of customers is going to be too much, right? Because they haven't decided if they like the thing yet, right? The average comic book is $5. If you've never had a McRib before, I know McRibs aren't $5. Are they $5 now, Jesse?
$5.95.
$5.49. $5.49.
If you've never had a McRib before,
it's $5.49.
And I was like, your choice is you can try a McRib, which I've been getting you excited about for the last 6 months, and have it delivered piping hot to your door.
How did Jesse steal McRib from me? Yeah. Audience, if you followed me on Facebook, I was into McRibs way before Jesse. Just get that out there.
I own, just so you know, and then we'll go back to topic. I own every single McRib box I've ever eaten. So a McRib so I'm at about 1,200 now. So if you can beat me by 1,200, we're good to go. And I have the receipt on top of each box.
Time out.
Just so you know.
What storage unit are these 1,200
know,
McRib
right?
boxes
This
stored
is this is in my Bucky's overage of hats storage bin. But yeah, I've kept every single one. I'm just one of those weird guys that like to, you know, if you get into something, you keep everything. So
Well, let me just say, so Philip, that's a great idea, and I love Jesse's idea of having drop spots for these, and maybe not there's a marketing strategy there, and I think you're a genius at figuring out what those are. Your once and future, even though it was kind of a failure, not the success we all hoped it would be, but there's some inklings of this idea and that idea merging together. I have fought the good fight for so long because, and this is no offense to you, Philip, because I know you're not one of these guys. So many publishers have tried to figure out a way to get at our customers because we're the middleman. And we have defended that position very, very strategically. Several times, a certain distributor also tried to figure out how to get at our customers around us. Let's just our old buddy Chip tried to do that with Comixology in a very obvious attempt. So many people have tried to figure out an end run around that, but I still think there's a way to make us to without going around us, make us the hub for an event like this. To me, this is an event. When Ignition launches, it's an event.
Yeah.
And I think you should go every way you can, including making the retailer part of that event with the cold open.
I think,
but I'm not accusing you of trying to end.
No, I don't take it that way.
Because right now, I think all hands are on deck. Figure out any way you can to get any comic into hands of anybody you can right now.
I think I appreciate what you're saying. I think on some level, the way we thought about it is Ignition launching is exciting for the people in this room, right? Because you know me and you know Jamie and you know, and you understand the context of that, right? But to the people that ultimately we want to serve, like, it doesn't matter, you know, like we exist in this interesting little industry where, like, because Marvel and DC are the main players, everybody's kind of locked into this headspace of like, the publishers are the brands. I'm a Marvel zombie, or I'm a DC fan, or, you know, I'm a Skybound insider, right? And I think those things are really powerful if they're organic, but I think what we tend to lose sight of is, like, Marvel wasn't always Marvel, right? There are Marvel zombies because Marvel organically, you know, Stan and everybody there created this thing that, you know, Jesse, to your point, people wanted to be a part of.
Yes.
Right. And what I see a lot of times with independent publishers is they put the company brand ahead of everything else, right? And it's kind of, you know, this is going to sound worse than I mean it to, but I can't think of a better way to express it, which is like, it's kind of a house of cards, right? There's nothing behind it, right? Like,
well, it's also ego driven rather than benevolency driven.
Right.
Right.
Well, the best example would
it's
be,
a little bit.
Go ahead, Swag. Go ahead.
Well, I'm saying I think it's a little bit putting the cart before the horse, because I think you can't.
That's a better way.
You can't become the brand that people have an affiliation to until you've done the work. You know, like an A24 is now A24 Pictures because they are who they are. But
literally A24, when we were making a list of like aspirational, like, who do we want to be? A24 was at the top of the list, right? Because it's like, that is a film studio that makes cool projects from really interesting creators. And they didn't become A24 because that was what they led with. What they did was they did the work And by the time you saw the fourth movie where you saw that logo flash up, like, man, every movie I go see lately has this freaking logo in front of it. I must be an A24 fan, right?
Right. And
That's,
you know, and talking, that's very much, it was their MO, and talking to some of the people in the building, and like how they started was good films, creator driven. We're going to like put some, you know, fame to these people's names. We're going to really push them. We're going to make them be known. We're going to get like, you know, the top talent that we can paired with these people. They're going to be on press junkets everywhere, and they're really going to build it from the ground up. And now it's like, I think there's a new A24 film with like Paul Rudd in it or whatever. And it's like, I don't even know who the filmmakers are anymore. Like, it doesn't matter anymore, you know? And that's kind of, you know, what you're getting at, Philip, here, where it's like, you can only get to that level until you've done the work. And so there's a few brands that can get away with that.
And
but
that's,
it's
I was
hard
just
to
about
do.
to say,
It's
Mark
hard to do.
Spears is exactly that. Keen Spot had been around forever, but nobody really ever bought a Keen Spot book thinking it was a Keen Spot book. But now Mark Spears has his brand at Keen Spot, and then all of a sudden, Keen Spot becomes this mover that's trying to get into positions that they could never get in with the things that they had. They had free comic book day comics for the last 5 or 6 years, I think, and I'd never paid attention to anything.
Yeah, I think the thing where you're talking about publisher, consumer, LCS, you can equate it to a convention, right? So if you're at MegaCon and they have 190,000 people that show up at that con for comics, let's just say 100,000 are comic book fans, that doesn't translate to the comic book store down the street, who might only have 500 comic book fans, yet there's 90,000 2 blocks over. So you need to have that in between a publisher and the consumer as well, that will create that unity, that triangle of how to sell one more book to a consumer.
Yeah, my hope, Dennis, is that what we're able to drive through the community building and the cold opens is that when that number one launches, what, you know, the customers inside the stores are going to see is like, there are all these new people coming in and they're picking up that book. Again, nothing draws a crowd like a crowd, right? Like, why are they picking up that book? They're showing up here specifically for this thing, right? And I think the other thing we want to do is, for the audience that's already inside your stores, is support and cater to those folks with point of sales material inside the stores. Because one of the things I hear over and over is that and it almost doesn't matter what kind of store the owner is running. When you ask retailers, like, where do your customers get their information? 8 times out of 10, it's from me, or they don't know about the thing until they walk into the store, right? So the way that we thought about that is, how do we give retailers things that they can put in their store to help them sell through, right? Because that's the most important thing for me. I don't care whether you order 10 copies or 20 copies or 5 copies. I want you to sell through those.
I actually have a perfect example of this. I bought a collection about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and the guy had, if everybody remembers, the comic shop news.
Yep.
And he had reverse bagged and boarded with every one of those issues, was with the issue that was on the front of the comic shop news. And so even something way back then that was big and thick and dense and not a lot of content, it was mainly Diamond Previews catalog before Diamond Previews catalog.
Right.
And all of a sudden you see the relevance to that buyer, that customer, was he picked up the comic shop news, and then a month or 2 later, when that book was on the shelf, he put that comic shop news with that comic.
Right. So one of the things we talked about with retailers at the roundtables, and I saw Emmett commented, "Don't send me posters." So one thing I'll note is, like, all of these promotional things will be structured like incentives. So they'll be opt-in for the retailer as well, right? So it's like, if you order 10 copies, you have access to these point of sale things, but I'm not sending you anything you don't want, right? You're saying, yes, please send me this poster. Yes, send me this shelf talker, or send me, you know, the tchotchke or whatever it is, and it'll be bespoke for each project. And I lost my train of thought. I was going somewhere with that, but I got distracted by don't send me posters.
One of the things that's very interesting is is, and I just want to hit this real quick, is, you know, my mom called me 2 days ago, and she was at one of the dollar stores, and she said, Brian, they got these comics here. They look so cool. They got this big, huge setup, and I'm telling you, I think that you should probably have me pick a couple of these up. You know what I mean? And if they were sitting in a shelf or somewhere back in the store, she wouldn't have seen that otherwise. But because they're in that, you know, the DC put those cool, you know, stand-ins with the comics and everything. And as soon as she walked in, she saw it. It made her go, "Oh, I need to call my son because this looks something he'd be interested in."
Right. And just to take that half step back, when you were talking about comic shop news, the thing I thought about is one of the things we're looking at doing is sending stores ash cans in advance of the books, right? So for the endemic audience, give them a taste. You know, they're already in the stores, so we don't need to pull them in there, and you know, and we don't have to train them on how to purchase the final product, right? So giving them an ash can, giving them a first look is the way to solve that. So, you know, it honestly, like, it's so much fun having spent the last, you know, 6 months and the year before that thinking, just looking at, like, where are we in the industry? What are the problems that keep reoccurring, right? What are the things that we all have been talking about? We were talking about it 5 years ago. We were talking about it 10 years ago. We were talking about it 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And how do we take some steps to at least try to address those things, as opposed to potentially being a publisher that has a solution in search of a problem, right? Like there are things about the industry that aren't broken, right? And that work very well. And those are the, you know, the things that we want to streamline and we want to make easier for customers, for retailers.
So I want to go backwards on the same question. So when you're talking about doing POP in stores and tents and mini tents and all this stuff and promos, I'm going to go back again to the same question. Why can you not co-op socially with them? Why does it have to be in store, or is there not an advantage? And here's the example. So Paramount Pictures is one of the sponsors of my brand. So every movie that comes out, I get 5 movies I can just send everybody, right? And these are exclusive ones, so they have special stickers, and I get contests, whatever it is. Well, guess what? They started getting questions on. They would say, "How do you like your movie?" And they would say, "You know what? I really don't want this sent to me. Is there any way I can get a digital code for the movie?" Right? And then I don't have to ship it anymore. So I don't have to spend the $6 to ship the item to the consumer. So as consumers change, they want to see stuff more socially. So my question to you is, we're talking about preaching to the choir and not doing stuff, but aren't you doing what we naturally always do, is just to send stuff to the store and hope they do something? Or should we not be hitting them socially even before they walk into the store?
I think it's a yes and. I don't think those two things are inherently, you know, mutually exclusive, right? But again, I think the goal here, like, and I should probably, like, underline this, right? I want to be a publisher. I do not want to be a retailer, right? And so I want to leverage those tools of digital marketing and direct to consumer, but my end goal is I want to create a community, and then within that community create a habit of, you know, I'm a person who self-identifies as a Cullen Bunn fan, therefore I purchase things that Cullen Bunn does. So at a certain point, you know, I want to lead them to water, but I don't want to be the person that keeps, you know, supplying them with their Cullen Bunn stories. I want them to choose one of the many marketplaces they can access it, right? Be it a comic shop, be it a digital marketplace, be it a bookstore, whatever. And so I think, yes, you know, the goal is to leverage those digital marketing tools, both organic and paid, to make sure that we're pulling people into that funnel and then training them to go, this is where you get subsequent chapters or subsequent stories.
You've got a huge marketing on. Oh, go ahead, Swag. Go ahead.
I was just going to go off of what Jesse was talking about, and this might go a little above even what Ignition would want to even try to create, but it's some of the things that I've talked about on my channel where, the ultimate question is, how do you get more people in stores? For me, it's like, it's sort of like that Moneyball quote where it's like baseball teams are always trying to buy players, but they shouldn't buy players. They should buy wins. And to me, it's like Marvel and DC, they're always trying to sell comics, but they shouldn't sell comics. They should get more customers.
Right.
That's how I think of it. And it's sort of like what Jesse, you're getting at here is it's like, yeah, if Ignition has items and materials already in the stores, and it's like, cool, you might be able to convert those people that are in there. And frankly, you probably should, because that's the people who are most likely going to buy your product. And that's probably enough, but in the bigger picture idea, like, how do you get people to, like you said, want to go to that very niche hobby shop that weren't going to do it? How do you get someone to go there? And you're not going to do that by having the materials in the store, right? You're going to have to do that by taking advantage of the social thing. And, just to something earlier that you guys were talking about, and from a retailer perspective, but where you were talking about the consistency that you guys are looking to do with your releases and stuff. And I know that that's something that a lot of publishers talk about, but like, I feel like that right there, if a publisher can really do that, like really do that, not just like the first couple, like we're talking 3, 4, 5 years from now, like you can really do it. And maybe you can, because it's more of like an upfront investment in a thing, so that you have it done before it's like, you're chasing your own tail, like trying to get it delivered. I feel like that just changes everything, because just the fact that what the release schedule is, I mean, then you can create, lightning in a bottle moments. You can create that North Star marketing campaign to know, like to on all the social places to know that, hey, this thing comes out this week, or, hey, here's the next issue coming out today. And then my Instagram feed is fed with Cullen Bunn, reels and him talking about the thing. And then Brian's show is like, he's sharing the trailer that just dropped for the, I mean, it's like that right there is just, I mean, it's just kind of a standard approach to like how movies do things. But like that right there is just like what is kind of missing in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Because go ahead and answer that, Philip. Sorry.
Yeah, I think, look, it goes back to, it's not that I'm the first person to identify these things or have these ideas, right?
Yeah.
Far from it. A lot of smart people in comics. Typically the thing that prevents publishers from doing this is you have the larger publishers, which there's an inertia there, right? And Jesse, you know this, right? The big companies are not good at innovating. Like, if somebody can prove a model and they can adopt it, they can streamline and optimize the heck out of that thing, right? But innovation is going to come from the small companies. And the challenge historically in comics is that because the barrier to entry is so low, that most independent comic publishers are not well capitalized enough to actually like innovate properly, right? It's a lot of grassroots stuff. It's a lot of kind of like, oh, we caught lightning in a bottle accidentally here. How do we replicate that?
Right. That goes along with what I wanted to mention here. So you're from Boom. Boom has a track record. Boom also has a lot of numbers into an algorithm of what made Boom successful and what made Boom not successful. And I want to ask you, on that algorithm, how much of it is creator, artist, publisher attached to it, topic, genre? In that algorithm, what makes a gamble on Cullen Bunn doing this at Ignition, kind of put together your clue answer. It's Cullen Bunn with the lead pipe in the conservatory.
Right.
What is that algorithm that you see, and how are you going to play with that algorithm to make Ignition the success that it'll come to?
Yeah, so I think I will caveat all of this by saying that anybody who claims that they can predict what's going to be successful is lying or delusional, because like that's the thing about content, right? Is it's alchemy as much as it is science. And so I think if you're good as, whether it's as a publisher or as a retailer, you get good at spotting patterns that are likely to result, like how do you minimize risk and maximize opportunity for success, right? And so when we looked at, what was, the group of creators that we were going to pull together for this and who were we going to go after, because we're investing in creators, we want people that have a track record of like great ideas and an ability to tell stories well, right? Because we're looking to build brands and we're looking to build brands outside of comics. We were looking for creators that we felt like, you know what, there's a strong base here and an opportunity to build, right? And we didn't want to come to the market with the same 10 names that are already, have commercial success in the endemic market, right? Because those folks, it's working for them, right? And so how do we, I saw Emmett posted a comment about Cullen currently competes too much with himself. 100% agree. That's why we wanted to get Cullen over at Ignition, was so that we could help him focus his brand, which he wants to do, right? And how do we create an environment where he can do his best work, which we know he's capable of, and connect with people that we know are going to love what he does, which is he is a horror writer through and through, right? Yeah. And the proof of that is Sixth Gun and Harrow County, and also we are a company that has a built-in media pipeline. Now, what a lot of people might not be aware of is that Cullen Bunn's hit rate on having stuff optioned is fantastic, right? His stuff is really appealing to film and TV folks. So, all those pieces kind of come together, and it makes sense to invest in that person. The reason that
Moneyball,
we need it. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
That's what Moneyball is, right? You're looking at Billy Bean was good at saying, okay, here are the guys that come in clutch at this time period and in this position, and we need those guys. Okay, you're looking at the guys.
Here's 5 guys in a row that can get you a hit on base.
Yes.
Every time.
Yes.
And after that, you're going to get 2 runs minimum.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's so important to look at these creators and go, okay, who has that track record? What about finding new creators? How much is that? How important is that to Ignition? I mean, is that something that you're looking at, or is it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, look, the easiest way to find new creators is announce that you're starting a comic book company, and all of a sudden they all come out, right? Yeah, I think, it's going to be a combination. It's going to be a combination of folks that we feel like are have unrealized potential, that we think we can be additive to helping build their profile and putting them in a position to succeed. There's going to be new or emerging creators. There's also an opportunity. There's, a number of folks that we've been talking to that have been working in animation for years, because it's never made sense for them to do a comic book because publishers weren't offering them deals.
Is that me? Oh, shoot.
Dennis, yeah, you're frozen. Just come back in.
So looking at folks in animation and other spaces that are really incredibly talented that we can bring in. And then there are, young emerging artists, and we're keeping an eye out, and writers, and I'm at the comic shop every single week, and Jamie's at the comic shop every single week, and Maggie and Jeremy and all of us, we're there and we're looking for stuff. Like, we're looking for people and projects to get excited about.
Well, what's interesting about that, and this is a question for you, it's one thing, I think that the difference, so being at the comic shop every single week is one thing, and knowing what's going on at the comic shop. But there's part of me that also says that, and this isn't a slight at any longtime retailer or brick and mortar shop owner, but I feel like a lot of old school guys maybe don't understand where the new school thought process. And what I mean by that is, and Dennis brought it up earlier. What I mean by that is, with Mark Spears, Mark will go, who's one of the hottest artists in comics right now. He'll go into a comic shop and he will people he'll ask for, where do you have any Mark Spears books, and the comic store owners won't even know who that is, but when it comes to the social media curve and the secondary market sales and this huge whirlwind of people looking for his books, it's so obvious in the social media world, but in the brick and mortar shop world, they don't understand that. Do you guys?
Well, I just want to say the difference is there's LCSs that want to understand, and then there's LCSs that have no.
And that's what I was getting at. Yeah,
right,
yeah.
Exactly.
Do you
done
see
it
that
for 40 years.
Yeah.
This is the way it does. I get my information from previews. I get my information from my one email a week from the 3 distributors. That's where I get my news from. So anyways, I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah. So do you see that at all, being in the comic shop and going and doing that research? Is that something that you're worried about?
I guess again, Dennis and I were talking before we started about the insanity of living in Los Angeles with all of our, natural calamities that happen around us. But the plus side is, like, I walk into Golden Apple every week and that store is widely stocked, and, not just with stuff that's available through the traditional distributors, but also, books on consignment and zines, and, they're very tapped in. So I think some of it comes down, like, I recognize that that's not every store, right? But I feel like the other thing about being a creator centric company is that we've got this whole network of creators, and they're always looking online and talking to each other and going, who's exciting, who's getting, who's getting you buzzing with what they're doing. And look, like, I don't, are we going to be the place that, consistently breaks talent that's never done anything before? I don't know that we will be, because again, part of the model is about investing in the creators. We have to have enough evidence that, like, somebody is going to show up and deliver the work and execute, right? And that's not to say that we won't find somebody that's never been published or is doing something for the first time. But, like, the example I would give is, 2 of the creators we announced at ComicsPro are Stephanie Williams and Leah Williams, no relation. Neither one of those writers have ever done an original thing before. So, there's a track record there, and personalities, and a social media presence, and a community that they've started to build. But we're hoping to take that, to the next level. So I guess what I would say is, no publisher is going to bat 100. We're going to miss out on something. There's going to be some submission that comes in, and a year later that person's going to pop and they're going to go, you passed on my thing. And I'll go, yep. Yeah. You know how I said I couldn't predict the hits? Guilty. Like, we're going to miss some things.
Can we get you, since you just said that, can we get your opinion on returnability? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? What is your opinion on returnability?
Well, I think in some way I'm responsible for returnability in the direct market on single issue comics. So I'd be a hypocrite if I said that I didn't think it was a good thing. I think it is not the only safety net, and it is not the only tool, and it's not going to work for every retailer. But I think there are some retailers that like that safety net to say, you know what, I'm going to use this to find my ceiling. I think where returnability goes wrong is where it is applied. Like I was never an advocate for like line-wide, industry-wide returnability. I think the product category doesn't necessarily support it, but as a signal to a retailer, I believe in this thing, and I want you to find your ceiling, used selectively, right? And it's the same thing with incentive gated variant covers. You know, like if every book you do has a 1 in 100 variant, then it's meaningless. It's a meaningless signal. There's zero chance that all of those 1 in 100s are going to be worth chasing, right?
Right.
Same thing with returnability, right? If I make every book returnable, every issue returnable, then it at a certain point is just more noise, right? And ultimately, as a retailer, it's not going to change how you order. You're just going to go, well, thank you, I appreciate the backstop, but I'm going to order how I was going to order because you're telling me these are all the same, right? I don't know if that answers the question. I think broadly, I think returnability is a good thing.
Okay. Yeah, sure. But one of the questions I want to ask you, why was it so important to Ignition, yourself, your team, talking about consistent trade dress? Why was that important?
Because one of our kind of North Stars is I want to avoid doing things that make your job harder. And the way that I view it, and I have partners that agree with me, is like the cover is a sales tool, the front and the back cover. That's what it is, you know? And so if you're a retailer and you're a high volume retailer, it's like, well, take it back to the McRib, which is a Dennis thing, not a Jesse thing, just to be clear. Take it back to the McRib, right? Like the whole thing about McDonald's was when they built that, it was about optimizing, like from the minute the order comes in, how quickly can we get the food out the door, right? Measuring inches of like, what's the motion that goes from the fry basket to the, to the counter. And I think, consistent trade dress makes it easier for the store, for the customer to go like, great, I know if I'm looking for the price, it's always going to be here. And I'm looking for the issue number, it's always going to be here. And then by extension, using that back cover as a sales tool, right? So our back covers will have essentially a log line and a sales pitch. So if the store owner is busy and doesn't have time to hand sell the product's doing the work for you, right? You can pick it up, flip it over, and go, this is what this is about. Creator information on the back, right? Because we assume everybody knows who, James Tynan is. Well, if you've never walked into a comic shop before, you don't know that this is like one of the most commercial, successful, best-selling horror writers, right? Like, how are we communicating things like that? But at its basis level, for me, it was, I don't want to give you as a retailer any reason to groan when you see my books show up.
Sure.
I want you to go like, great, I can scan that thing, I can bag and board these. The UPC's on the front cover. I don't have to take it out of the bag and board. I don't have to touch it any more times than I absolutely need to. And here's the thing: if you build that trade dress out and you're upfront with the cover artists you work with, and you go, look, here's the template. They're all working digitally, or at least delivering digitally. It's like you can put something there, but it's going to be covered up because that's where the logo goes, because that's where the UPC goes. And the reality is, and I'm somebody who comes from an art background, boxes are great. Limitations are great. It forces you to be creative in how you problem solve, and that's not true for every market, right? That's important for the direct market. For the book market, it might be a different thing.
What about
so when we're talking about trades, it might be different.
What about incentive variants and things like that for the retailers?
I think, Dennis, you mentioned not going overboard on something is killing the children in terms of the series count. I think too much of a good thing is always a bad thing. Like moderation, control is the thing. Fundamentally, our position is if I get a store to order 25 copies to unlock that ratio variant, and, you know, in theory, the logic is, okay, I was going to order, I'm making this up, right? But I was going to order 20 copies, but now I'm going to order 25 because I know that 1 in 25 is going to cover the gap. And so even if I don't sell those 5 copies, I haven't lost anything, right? It's another tool in theory to help a retailer find their ceiling. My problem with that is I still haven't armed you as the retailer with anything to actually help you move those 5 copies. I put that burden on you, right? And so our approach on incentive variant covers and ratio variant covers is they're going to be used very sparingly. And here's the other, you know, thing. Ooh, Brian, you can hit that button now. The
the unfiltered,
the real talk, the unfiltered.
Okay, go for it. We don't even need it.
So here's the reality is, once you get on that hamster wheel, it's hard to get off.
Yes.
You know, and what I told a retailer in New York is the best way I know not to get addicted to heroin is to not try heroin.
Mm-hmm.
Guaranteed to work, right? So we're not. I've seen how effective variant covers can be and incentive covers can be, and I think they're a useful tool. And Jesse, you and I, working together on a number of projects, had a lot of success leveraging those tools in a way that was effective, but was also value additive to the end customer, right? When we did those Power Rangers covers that all connected, the people that got those really enjoyed those, and it was additive to their fan experience, right? So I think if you do it that way, it's okay, right? But you need to have a reason for doing it, and you need to do it sparingly. Otherwise, it becomes this thing that you're chasing.
It's not special
to cover.
Anymore. Yeah.
Right.
Can I ask then? Without those tools, Philip, does the math? You know, when you think about what you need to sell in order to have a good margin,
it does if you have a long-term view and if you take a holistic approach, right? If your business plan requires you that, like, I'm going to launch a 5-issue limited series, and by issue 5, I need to have this margin, then a lot of the stuff I'm talking about doesn't work, right? Or I should say, will not math out more often than it does, right? But if you look at it from the perspective of I'm investing in Cullen Bunn, or I'm investing in Jeremy Hahn, or I'm investing in Cy Spurrier, and over the life of that, in that Moneyball approach, right, in that portfolio approach, I believe that if I stack all these things together and I build that brand up large enough, that in the aggregate it will math out, right? And again, that goes to even the POP material, right? Like, to I think Emmett's point, I can send a poster for, you know, Series X, and that thing is essentially trash, you know, what, 60 days after I send it.
Mm-hmm.
But if I create a POP material that is centered around selling Cy Spurrier product in your store, well, you're going to be selling Cy Spurrier product for years, right? If I do my job right. So that investment then becomes worthwhile. You know, it's the same way that we approach digital advertising and digital marketing, right? You have to look at what is the lifetime value of acquiring this customer. And if I believe that I can acquire enough customers, then the investment becomes worthwhile, right? But I don't need to get those dollars tomorrow, and I don't need to get those dollars next month.
Right. Just on what you said, can you tell us, why is it important for you to invest in metadata? Why was metadata so important for Ignition to be involved in?
Years ago, when I first started working with Paul Levitz, we had a person in the mailroom, as most publishers did, right? And we were shipping out comps directly from the mailroom, and he said something to me that stuck with me, which is the small things signal big things, right? If if you have somebody in the mailroom sending out comps, and those comp copies show up and they're poorly packaged, and there's something missing, right? It's not about those comps. If the person receiving that, if that's their one interaction, they've now made a whole bunch of assumptions about who you are as an organization, right? It's the same reason that you and Dennis make sure that your approval rating on direct sales channels is so high, right? Because in microcosm, it doesn't really matter, right? But in the macro, it's your brand, right? And metadata for me is fundamental. It's like if I can't provide you with accurate information about what the product is, when it's going to release, trim size, price point consistently, then the whole thing kind of falls apart. And it's one of those things too, that when, I was looking at building this from the ground up with Jamie and with Jeremy and with Eric, what I said to them is, I said, there are three things that actually create value for a comic book publisher. And none of those three things are the product itself. The three things that create value are the metadata, because without that, you have no idea what you're selling or what you've sold. The second thing is the contracts, because without that, you don't own anything, right? You don't control anything. You don't have a business. And then the third thing is the actual files, because with that, you can reprint whatever it is, right? And so those three things, I think, are fundamental. And most independent comic publishers, because when they start, they typically don't have the experience, or the focus is on the creative. That stuff takes a back burner. And the problem is, if you don't build it to scale, then it is going to break, right? Because there is a period of time when you're small where you can just brute force your way through any problem. It's like, if I just put my nose to the grindstone, I put in a couple extra hours, I can solve any problem, right?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to bring in our third Caballero, Emmett from Haven for Heroes. What up, Emmett? How you doing, brother?
Oh, what's going on? Thank you very much for having me in. Appreciate it.
Emmett, I saw your question, and I wasn't ignoring it. Yes. So are you talking about the unlockable variant, the one per store?
One per store, yeah. I would pick a different name than unlockable, because you know what? It's not really being collected by the speculators.
I like the thank you variant.
Thank you variant is always good, or one per store. That I don't think the speculators actually know that the unlockable was one per store.
Yeah,
probably under 1,500 books. Print
ones. I love the one per store idea, because it levels the playing field for large accounts and small accounts. It's like, if you support the book, you get a copy of this cool thing, right? And then what you do with it is up to you. Some folks are going to be able to flip that. Some folks are going to give it to their favorite customers. Some stores are going to identify, hey, here's this person that has signed on to the Ignition brand, and they're ride or die, and I'm going to reward them by giving them access to this thing. So I'm a big fan of those.
Yeah,
and it really creates that bond also, like you said. And I think I know Dennis is gonna freak out when I say it, but I think Bad Idea did that, with their gold pins. It's something so simple as a gold pin, but those things are so beloved by the fans, and it created this excitement about it, right? And that giving that creating that excitement and causing that rarity or whatever it is, and saying, okay, that's going to go to the fans of the program or the product or the brand, just creates that bond.
I agree with you, Brian. The only thing is that it didn't pay off for the people that were the stores.
Yes. Well,
right.
Yeah.
And so, and then there was no payoff, from Bad Idea going forward, like more books, more stores. It didn't happen. So it was, I know they're still around and they're still working on stuff, but for me, it didn't work. I mean, it didn't bring anybody into my store other than people who were going to put the book on eBay the second they walked out front.
Yeah, but that's such a big part of the hobby now, which is that flipper. I mean, you brought it up with the unlockable and how flippers don't realize that, but I know Bad Idea also uses those pins to get into certain events that, unless you have a pin or you're part of that group, you're not going to get into those events, which you could say if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it does create that bond with the brand, which is,
I think
right.
The way that we want to approach stuff like that is because we're reaching out to folks who are hopefully not already in the stores, right? And who are not already part of the collector community or the endemic reading community, is if they're invested in the creator and they're then invested in the story that they're telling, like how do we give retailers items that are authentic, to borrow a word from Swag, and like resonate with that story or in world, right? That encourages is an additional kind of like incentive for people to come into the store, right? Like, okay, I know I can get this thing digitally, I know I can wait, but if I show up today, I'm going to get this cool thing, whatever it is, right? Like one of the kind of best promotions in my mind was those original Green Lantern rings, right? It's like, oh man, I need those, right? So how do we replicate that kind of idea? And it has to be bespoke. It has to be like tailored to the project that actually
you did
resonates.
it. Those launch kits for Green Lantern were monsters. I still give them away. I bought 1,000 Green Lanterns, and I still have like 500 of those launch kits. Anytime we do a kids activity thing, we're handing out. Did I say Green Lantern?
Do you mean Power Rangers?
Yeah,
Power Ranger. Yeah,
Power
sorry.
Rangers, yeah.
The Power Ranger launch kits that you guys had.
Yeah,
I had 1,000 of them, and I still bust them out for kids events. And who doesn't want a Power Ranger?
Fun story about that. I think Jesse knows this one. When we did that, we had never done a launch party before. We had no idea what the reception was going to be like. And I think what we had said was basically if you cleared a certain hurdle, we would give you one launch pack for every copy.
Right.
Yeah.
And we had to assemble. I don't. It's been long enough where I don't remember the numbers, but I want to say it was something like 30,000 envelopes. So each one of those things that you give away, Dennis, I guarantee you has somebody got a paper cut from that thing. and there's somebody's DNA is
made
like,
with real
blood
employee blood.
Right. Yeah. Like we basically shut the company down for 3 days and did nothing but assemble those packs. Somewhere I'll try to find. I've got video footage of in the conference room, and it's literally just an assembly line of people listening to music and bagging things as fast as they could. And I think we ended up shipping out 4 pallets to Diamond, and we had to do it like we knew that if we didn't shut down the company and execute this thing, the whole Power Rangers launch was going to leave a bad taste in everybody's mouth, because those things needed to arrive the same Wednesday that issue 1 arrived. Yeah. And so that was, but it's fun, right? It's the thing that you can do when you're small and you're innovative and you're passionate about what you're doing.
Yeah. I love what you're saying, though, that it has to be authentic and it has to be about, like Swaggle has brought up, that it in world, because the Green Lantern rings worked great. But then they came out with the Legionnaire rings, and I still have those. Nobody, I have them out for free, and people won't even take them for free. Yeah. So they're like, "Hey, this worked. It's just another ring. And it didn't." So
then they had the awesome 90s Green Lantern rings, but then they came out with that early 2000 Green Lantern ring, and my whole staff, we were so excited to get those that morning. And we're busting open the boxes, and we're like, dude, They won't even go over your first knuckle. They were made for kid size. And we took a picture of the entire staff, 10 of us, all with the rings on our pinkies and on the first knuckle. And we were doing this on all the rings. And somebody at DC didn't like that too much.
Yeah.
But I'm like, you don't make kids rings for adult collectors. You just don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the reasons that I love having Jeremy in the mix is he's, as a creator, he's been doing that type of stuff on his Image books for years. Like when he launched the Beauty.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that promotion, Dennis?
Well, are you talking about the paper bag?
Well, there's the paper bag variant, but then he sent out condoms.
Yes.
To
stores
to give away. They were beauty branded condoms because the whole comic book was about an STD that created this like horror reality. And but yeah, and then the way he thinks about the business and doing the secret variants in the paper bag, and like I think when he did it for the Realm at Image, it was probably like 5 years before anybody posted a picture of that cover online, because the deal was if you bought it, you had to get it directly from him. And he basically said like, okay, if you buy this, you're agreeing not to share it. It has to stay secret, And I think that's the kind of fun, authentic things you can do with comics. Again, to build community.
Apologize to him because I gave him shit online because the Realm is a local Detroit comic that they didn't ever get the name from. So tell him I'm sorry about that.
I'll let him know. I'm sure he's gotten over it.
You offended somebody, Dennis? No way.
That's crazy. No timestamp. All right, let's talk about ComicsPro a little bit here. You're talking about fun, and ComicsPro fun, but now we're in reality. So how do you proceed from ComicsPro, talking to all these roundtable people, and now making it reality as far as everything you've talked about today?
Well, the way I was even saying it there, it's like, you guys said some very nice things about the presentation when I came on that made me embarrassed, but that's the equivalent of like, I'm the writer and I just went panel 1, the army charges over the hill, right? And now they're like, okay, we Babe Ruthed it, right? We called our shot. We're like, okay, we're going over there. Now we have to actually do it, And I think the thing that I always take from ComicsPro is it's always valuable to me to test ideas out, because I get to go into a room with a bunch of different retailers all at once and see, here's the message we're putting out there. How is it resonating? Where are people saying, this works for me, this doesn't work for me? What are the questions that we're asking to gather information? And ultimately, like this was an interesting one because it's the first ComicsPro I've attended as a publisher where I wasn't actually selling anything yet, and to an extent that was by design, because it's proof of concept for what I want to do with this creator driven brand, right? Like I had publisher friends of mine going like, you're not announcing a book? No, we're not announcing. You got to announce a book. You got to tell them what they're buying. And I was like, I don't think so. And one of the things that was really gratifying was, in the days after we gave the presentation, the thing that people kept coming back to me and saying was actually not like, we really liked your presentation. That was expected, right? They were like, you've set a bar and we expect you to show up and deliver something that matches, the last 3 things you said, right? What really got them was we had 5 creators there and we had them come up, and all we told them was, you have 2 minutes and you can't announce the book, and we just want you to talk about like why you're working with us, because we're brand new, right? Why did you pick us to do your project? And you can say who you're working with and kind of like a general vibe. And so many retailers came up to us afterwards and said that was the part that stuck with me, because watching a creator come up there and speak from the heart and talk about how transformative the experience has been for them is the part that they connected with. And I was like, exactly. So I just sold more Cy Spurrier books in that 2 minutes than I could have done in 10 minutes if I had given you the most beautiful pitch for his project, right? Because again, I'm not looking to get you invested in just this project. I'm looking to get you invested in this person, right?
Yep.
And let me
I don't know that I really
question,
answered your question, Jesse. I may have.
Yeah, the question is, if someone goes to an event, there's an expectation of, okay, this is what they said. But now we're 2 weeks out.
Yeah.
What have you done to stay in their mind? What keeps your presentation and what you're then do become reality, and you're staying focused? Because keep in mind, these stores are doing FOCs during this time.
Right.
They're gaining new issues. How do you create reality?
I think I come from the school of marketing that like you have to see something 3 or 4 times before it sticks, right? I made a good first impression. So part of it is, making sure that we're working with outlets that are trade focused in publicity. So making sure that Rich at Bleeding Cool has that information. ICV2 just ran an article. Like those are the retailer targeted places, right? And then following up next week, reaching out to those same retailers and saying, hey, would you like to sign up for our newsletter?
Okay.
And we're not going to bug you and we're not going to abuse that. And how do you opt in? But the idea is in between now and then on social, on press outlets, how are we reinforcing that? The other thing was launching Curious Haunts, right? One of the things we promised retailers was we're going to build creator brands and we're going to have these video podcasts. And here's proof of concept, right? Here is a 30-minute episode that I think is of a quality level that you typically don't see from publishers in our space. It's what we promised, which is Jeremy's not trying to sell you anything, right? Actually, that's not true. He's trying to sell you the Toshin Shining book that he's really excited about, and the box set of Late Night with the Devil that he loved, right? But it was, to your point, Jesse, I think you have to show up and you have to demonstrate through action that like the words that you communicated are actually you're living up to them, or you're at least attempting to live up to them, right? And I know earlier in the chat you mentioned Free Comic Book Day, right? So one of the things we're looking at for Free Comic Book Day is how do we give retailers something for Free Comic Book Day that will make their lives easier? I don't have any product to sell, right? And our first books won't be out until August. If I were to come in and do a bunch of promotional material for a book that hasn't been announced yet, that's not helping you either, right? Because now that's off cycle and that's making your life harder, right? But it's about showing up and saying like, look, we are demonstrating through action that we're sincere in wanting to be value add to our partners, right? Make your life easier, add value.
There you go.
You also did the most important thing of all, and that's go on this show.
Yeah, there you go.
Go on this show.
Yeah.
The hottest comic industry show in the entire world.
There you go.
Well, who's buttering up who now?
Hit the like button. Hit the like button.
I stumbled into here. I don't like Brian sent me a link. I clicked on it because he promised me a Nigerian prince was going to send me $1 million.
Right.
But I actually think, Swagg, that's a very good point, which is, going to ComicsPro, that's talking to one audience. I'm connecting with a different audience here. There may be some overlap, right? But again, it's about meeting your partners and your customers where they are, right? And saying, I'm going to come to you and I'm going to present this information in a way that I think is hopefully helpful for the folks that are listening.
Right. So Swagg, Philip said the connection. What did you connect with at ComicsPro, if anything? It's your first one, right?
Good question. Yeah, it was the first time going there, and I kind of went in with a little bit of a different, I guess, kind of perspective, because I'm not a retailer. I'm a comic content creator, but I also work in the creative space. So I think I was just kind of going in and just sort of wanting to see creativity at work in various forms. That's really what I wanted to be inspired by, and so I did a little recap video on what I heard from the show and gave some of my reactions to stuff, and mainly it was about sort of the big two. And I'm always being a little bit kind of flippant and stuff when I do some of these reactions, but I think I was a little bit maybe disappointed. I don't know if what I was expecting to hear, because again, it was my first time and I'm not a retailer and it's not necessarily for me, but I think I was hoping that I would hear kind of what everything Philip talked about in this last, 2 hours. It's just interesting ideas of different approaches, like outside the box thinking, creative ways to make great titles. And I didn't get a lot of that from various publishers or retailers. And, you mentioned Philip. I mean, I kind of made a comment with some of the people I was sitting with at the show as people were sort of presenting the titles. And I, as they kind of, with all due respect to like the publishers out there, that they're doing their thing, they have to like solicit and everything, and I get it. But like once they get to their like 15th title, I'm like, I'm just not going to remember any of this stuff. I'm not going to retain any of this, and I don't really feel like this is that helpful. And I don't think that the retailers are. I mean, it's just too much. So I was surprised that was some of the presentations there. But I enjoyed talking to a lot of the different people and meeting people within the hobby that all work in different verticals of it, and that was great.
So, well, it's what Jesse and I talk about. There are so many different kinds of comic book stores, and of course, I made that joke about fax machines. When you look at the ComicsPro retailer, that is an entire other beast than doing the diamond presentation. That's an entirely different beast than doing a panel at San Diego. That's an entirely different beast, than, sending out, because I know Boom had the Boom Innovators and, a lot of different projects like that. And you could call some of those guys up and say, hey, I want to send you a PDF. And they're like, I don't know what that is, and that's an audience you can never break through, even with a really good idea. How much, it kind of goes back to that algorithm question. How much do you bank on ComicsPro being that launch and your YouTube idea and your next presentation and the next thing that you do to, I got to believe that you can't bank even 20% of your business model on the ComicsPro retailers carrying you through.
I mean, historically, here's what I'd say is my experience is at that annual conference is probably one of the most valuable direct market things I do every year. Like it not only in terms of the information and feedback that I get, but I also know that I'm talking by and large with folks that are opting in and showing up to grow their business, right? And to sell more books. And I would say, like, again, my experience at Boom and, 12 years of ComicsPro is like, if, Swag, I think you're right. I think if you're a publisher and you're pitching 15 projects, like, you got to learn how to edit, right? But the thing that I would see is if we at Boom, we would typically focus on somewhere between 3 to 5 projects, and they were timed so that they FOC'd afterwards. And we saw like marked differences. We would see a bump from ComicsPro. And it's rare in the direct market to get that kind of ROI. Now, I don't know that was every publisher's experience. I think you have to come in and you have to have a strategy, and you have to, like, again, know how to talk, to your point, Dennis, talk to the audience you're trying to reach. But I don't know what percentage it would be, because again, the ComicsPro membership changes from year to year.
Sure.
There are years where, like, at that conference, Midtown's in the room. That's going to change your math versus a year that they're not. If there's a year that Phil Boyle's in the room, or this year Conan from mycomicshop.com. Those are the things that are going to impact.
Was
those
Conan
numbers.
Was Conan there?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
You said a key word there, and I want to bounce back on that real fast. You said once a year. how do you get past the once a year? Shouldn't that not be, how do you get to, what is the good number? Is it 6 times a year, 12 times a year that you're really engaging in this group of retailers? And can you manifest that yourself? Do you have to go to ComicsPro, or can Ignition actually manifest that quarterly or through live streaming?
I don't think it's mutually exclusive, right? Like, I think what I did, you know, ahead of ComicsPro is I did probably 20 different meetings with, you know, either a select group of retailers or specific retail, all different sizes, right? Because part of what I was looking for is feedback. We've been in the lab working on this thing. What do people think? You know, is this a good idea? Is it a bad idea? What are you bumping up against? You know, one of the things that ComicsPro specifically instituted is you have to opt into it, and you have to, you know, as a publisher, opt into this program. But there's a program now where you can do digital seminars and hit, you know, the same group, right, over the course of the year. Now, for me, I think it's, you know, how do you stack those relationships, the direct relationships, the visits to Comic-Con, where, you know, it used to be the Diamond Lunch. It's going to be something else this year, I'm sure. How do you go to New York Comic-Con? You know, we started having those conversations at New York, right? And meeting with, and so some of those are small group settings, some of them are larger. I guess, you know, for me, it's all yes and, right? And the question is, how do you manage it? How do you get organized about it so that it is a regular thing? You know, like, again, like when I was the person doing the Boom retailer emails, Jesse and Dennis, you guys probably both remember, it was like every single week, like clockwork. And at the time, the thing that I did to distinguish our emails was I made a video. And it was, you know, kind of proto YouTube-esque, where it's just me talking about a thing, pointing to the thing, and, you know, here's what you need to know for FOC. And my idea back then was, you know, retailers are super busy. If you don't have time to read this thing, you can watch it, you can listen to it, and it's going to be short and sweet and to the point. And here's the info, right? But again, you're also dealing with, again, 1,000+ small business owners who are all, again, going back to what I said earlier, it's like ask 15 retailers for their opinion. They're going to tell you 20 different ways to do things, right?
Yep.
You use the word retailer. Can you tell me what a retailer is? What does Ignition look at in the comic book industry as a retailer?
In terms of, yeah, I mean, generally the way that I would look at it is somebody that is selling, in our case, I usually refer to them as retail partners, right? Somebody who's opting in to sell Ignition product, right? And, you know, some of those folks are going to be brick and mortar, to Brian's earlier point. Some of those folks are going to be online retailers. My end goal is to reach as many customers as we can without, you know, and taking every reasonable precaution we can to not like cannibalize one channel's customer for another channel's customer, right? Like, that's the key thing, right? I don't ultimately, if you're asking a customer to buy from this channel instead of that channel, you haven't sold any more books. You sold the same number of books. And here's the other like reality is, like, all the numbers I've seen, the margins are largely the same. You know, like, there's no silver bullet of like, oh, well, if I can just convert all my customers to direct to consumer, or if I can just convert all my customers to digital, all of a sudden I'm going to pick up this magical extra 10 points, 15 points on the margins. You're not, because each one of those channels have their own costs and expenses that essentially it washes out, you know? That's why when, you know, I would have conversations with retail partners who were concerned about Boom doing stuff on Kickstarter, I would say, look, the reality is the costs that go into doing this and the timeline that's required means I'm making the same amount of money on those sales as I would if I just went through a traditional channel. So the only way this makes sense is if I believe, What's that?
You know, it would be less if you had given Berserker to retailers first. You would have not made as much money.
Correct, but Berserker is kind of like the ideal case study. It's lightning in a bottle, right? But it proves the concept, which is like the only way that makes sense is if I believe that I can reach customers that are not already in stores,
right,
and then create a conversion, right? Otherwise, I'm just taking money out of one pocket and putting it into another pocket. And by the way, creating a heck of a lot more work for myself in the process.
Oh yeah,
right. Because
well, Brian, do you think this is a good time to talk about Rob Liefeld?
Well, I mean, that brings up a great point. Not only with just Rob, but the whole thing altogether. With what's going on with Diamond and how so much is going to change, and we're going to a crowdfunding. Such a big crowdfunding is such a big part of everything. Yeah, I think it's a great time to bring it up. Why don't you go ahead and explain?
I'll give a little background. So Rob Liefeld made I think a statement last night or this morning. I can't remember. I heard about it first thing this morning. That he's going to release Youngblood, but he's going to do it direct to Whatnot and other sales channels
direct
for
to
6
consumer.
to 7 months.
Yep.
Direct to consumer, and the retailers will not get a taste of it until he has done all of his direct sales. And then that stirred up a giant controversy in a couple of the retailer forums that I'm in. And basically they were like, well, Rob doesn't sell anyway. Well, then why do you worry? Why are you upset about this?
So basically this is what he said. He said to retailers, as we have a few, I love you, I support you, I buy online and in person. I've advocated on my podcast to support the clubhouses, as that's what I believe they are. I don't want them to disappear like record stores, all of which have closed and vanished in my area and well beyond. I'm a weirdo and I'm prone to saying weirdo things. One of those things is that I can't continue to rely on the traditional marketplace to fully support my artistic endeavors. Expanding into new markets is part of evolution. To retailers, I say that my work doesn't sell for that. To retailers that say my work doesn't sell for you, I feel terrible that my work can't move. I feel bad. Hopefully in the future, my work will sell again. Wishing you all the best. Now, the reason he put that out is because there was that fallout that you're mentioning, Dennis.
Yeah.
So
yes.
Yeah, there's
and I had a time to talk to Rob this morning after all that blew up. And I listed off moments in time over the last 20 years as a retailer where just Rob did 2 books for Marvel, and Rob did 3 books for Marvel, 2 books for DC. He did a couple side projects, and all of them sold out. And the retailers just kind of look past that and they just go, F Rob Liefeld. He doesn't sell. And if he's not going to sell us the books, then we're not going to buy him. And it's like, okay, guys, but you have to understand we're in a new situation. What's Rob going to do? Go to Image and put it through Lunar, where I'm never going to buy it because I refuse to support Discount Comic Book Service being my wholesaler and using my money to, support their undercutting of the SRP. There's a lot of ins and outs just in the last year, let alone the last 5 years.
To talk about other platforms, which I'm more interested in than all that other stuff. If you're a comic book store waiting for a customer to come into your store to sell them a product and not selling on another platform to consumers who want product, you need to be doing both. And I think he is right. You need to be looking at other platforms to be selling product, and to limit yourself makes no sense in this day and age.
Yeah. It's obvious that things are going to have to change. And that's with any industry, that's with anything, as we move on and get older and things change, everything changes with it. And the direct to consumer market is the future. And it's just the way it is. Less people. It's funny. I talked about a Tom Hardy post the other day where he made a post saying that, once you kind of get addicted to being, by yourself and just staying in your house because you don't have to deal with people. Well, that's a problem, but it's also kind of true because you have all these people that are, ordering from Amazon, getting their groceries delivered. You know, it's on some type of monthly thing where they just shows up at their door. You have food, you know, being dropped off at your door. You can just pay somebody to go do it. Everything is joining that model, and comics is going to have to go with it at some point too.
Yeah,
So,
and the point is, when you said now, it's been direct to consumer for 10 years.
Yes.
In the
Even
comic
longer.
book world, we are in the now stage.
But
Well, and actually,
you could get a subscription from Marvel way back when.
But
You know,
not
you guys
anymore,
get
yeah.
collections in with the paper bags.
Yes.
You know,
folded in
so
half.
like
Folded in half,
they've
yeah.
been direct to consumer forever, but that at least that was more worrisome because at least that was at the same price point. When
Well-
people come in and say they have a tough time paying $5 for a book, but they pay $45 for a Kickstarter, but it's the Kickstarter experience. It's the other things they're getting with it. They're not competition for me. We're not selling the same product.
Spoken as someone, again, not a retailer, don't know what I'm talking about, so throw it away. But
You're a creator.
I really do think that it's important. I think that people in this industry have more of an abundance mindset with a lot of this stuff.
Absolutely.
I
Bring it
think
on.
people buying comics just leads to people buying more
Buy
comics.
comics.
And if
Yeah.
Rob Liefeld wants to sell direct to consumer, I bet there's a lot of people that follow him that are churned comic book buyers.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that's another part too. I forget what we were talking about, and I wanted to like mention that with something Philip was saying, where it's like on my channel, I consistently see anecdotal evidence, but I consistently get comments that are just like, "Oh man, like I just dropped off, or I just got back into comic book collecting. I've been, you know, not doing it for like 4 years." The comment. I've now had people who like, "Oh, Swag, I haven't watched your channel in 3 years, and I finally got back into comics." Like, so there's just a lot of people saying that, you know, there's a constant revolving door here. And I kind of feel like you got to hit these other mediums of selling things, because that's eventually going to lead to people going back into comic shops.
I don't know
maybe
how
I'm naive to
retailers.
think that.
I don't know how retailers are worried about what Rob's doing direct to consumer. It's ridiculous. Competition is good. It's healthy, but they're not really my customers at that moment when that's what they're looking for. They're looking for Rob Liefeld's new stuff that he's only selling there. I won't have it because he's not selling it to me. So that's not a worry of mine. But when they come to look for his older stuff, I got long boxes of it, brother. Come on in.
Yeah. Well, one of the cool things about this is Facebook has done something that's very, very awesome, and it engages you to engage, right? So on Rob Liefeld's page, I'm a top contributor, right? When my post goes up, it says top contributor. And the guy below me writes something, it doesn't say top contributor or rising star. And so it engages you to talk more, right? To be part of that group, to say something, to be important. I'm in, and I know Dennis is, Emmett, I don't know about you. I'm in 0 comic book groups, right? I don't talk to, if I want to talk to a retailer, I'm on the phone, I'm texting, Facebook messaging. I don't want to be in any of those groups. If you have something to say, just come out and say it. And I think that's what hurts us, is because we get these quiet folks that say something in the background, but they won't actually come out and say something. And that's what hurts our industry. We need more voices to come out. So at the end of the day, it is what it is. Rob is taking advantage of social networking by keeping his name out there. And that's how you do it.
At the same time, he's a creator. And what do all creators want? All creators want to get their product in the hands of the people that, you know, want it. And there was a problem where Rob was being told by a lot of his fans that they couldn't get his books because they didn't, you know, the comic shops didn't order enough of them, or there was problems with the distribution or this and that. So, you know, his thought process is, I want to make sure that the people that are my fans get my books. And that is, that's a good problem to have.
And I'd guarantee you, if Rob went to ComicsPro, he would not get a welcome reception, because that's not the books that ComicsPro type people really get behind. They get behind, and no offense, they get behind Ignition books. They get behind Boom books. Just like you were saying, other publishers would not have had the same responses that you had via Boom.
Right.
Rob Liefeld is definitely not top list talk about at ComicsPro.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I fully agree with that, but I get what you're saying, Dennis, and I think again, it goes back to like every, it was funny. I'm thinking about what Swagg said. I agree 100%. Like, one of the things our industry needs more of is an abundance mindset. Like, and maybe it's because we're in a business where like collectability and scarcity is like built in, to what we do, that we kind of get locked into this like scarcity mindset. But I remember when we went into lockdown in 2020, one of the first presentations I did afterwards, I made the case to the retailers that we were engaging with, look, if what you think you are selling is the only value that your store has is that you're selling an exclusive product that is not available anywhere else, then you don't have a business. That's not a business. Your business is selling community, right? And whether you're doing that in your store, Dennis introducing people to like, older material that, oh wow, I remember that from my childhood. Or I always wanted that. Or, Emmett, you welcoming people into your store, Jesse, the community you've created, on your live streams. Like, the people show up, yes, they're buying things, but they show up to be part of something, right?
Yes.
Right.
And
100%.
And so I think, again, I haven't dived into everything that like Rob has been saying, but what I would say is like, it's the two things can be true, right? Rob can be getting a lot of feedback that his customers are not getting access to his books, and retailers want access to those books, right? And from what I can tell from the reading the message, it sounds to me like he's saying, I'm going to sell these limited rare editions in advance, right? Yep. And Rob's a smart guy, and I don't know this, right? But it would not surprise me if part of the thought process is, I'm going to build up anticipation. I'm going to create buzz around this project. I'm going to get people talking about it, which, Dennis, like you said, it's like with Berserker, that Kickstarter campaign created buzz. It created interest. It created a conversation, right?
Mm-hmm. And let me add to it. Rob Liefeld can't go on Dennis Miller's show and talk about Youngblood #1 releasing to comic book stores. Keanu Reeves was able to go on Jimmy Kimmel, I think, wasn't it? Jimmy Kimmel?
Yeah. He ultimately did all three shows.
But
that was one of the things that people really loved, is he came back for when the trade dropped, when the second volume came out.
Right.
He was committed.
The buzz of that cannot even compare to Keanu showing up at the Diamond Retailer Summit and saying, "Hey guys, buy my books."
Yep.
And that's what I think Rob's trying to do with this, is do that. Hey, I have 1,000 people watch every show I have. I've got 2,000, 3,000 people watch every Robservation that I do. I can get more buzz to sell my own premium edition of this than you guys can give me if I showed up to ComicsPro or to San Diego.
Right.
I want to talk about one of the real big points in Ignition Press and what you guys are doing, Philip, and I want to start out the story by Mark Spears is in the chat. And Mark Spears says, the industry as a whole does not pay creators enough. No other industry pays half the rates they did 30 years ago. It forces creators to become retailers as well. And one of the things that you talk about is, humane working conditions and stuff like that for creators, which also includes pay. Can you kind of talk on that subject as well?
Yeah, and look, I want to caveat this by saying that, like, there are always going to be bad actors in any space, right? There are going to be people that see an opportunity to take advantage of a system, and they're going to exploit it, right? And certainly, comics as an industry is fueled by passion, right? And that allows that exploitation to happen. But by and large, I think my experience is that publishers don't underpay creators because they're trying to exploit the system or trying to, make a couple extra points. It's the realities of those business models, right? And I think too often we try to assign intent where it's just like a person trying to solve a problem in the best way that they know how. That being said,
oh, I'm sorry. There's more people that want to work in comics than the industry can sustain. That's the truth.
Right.
Well, let's just look back at Oni when they figured out that business model where we can sell 2,000 comics to anyone. Well, how much profit is left 10, 15 years ago after selling 2,000 of an Oni book at $2.99 tops?
Right. So that means that you have to control those costs and you have to kind of like work within those constraints, right? At Ignition, we're fortunate enough to where, again, we're able to take a long-term view and we're well capitalized enough to be able to do that. And so part of our thesis and part of our philosophy is like, people don't do their best work when they're worried about making their mortgage or putting food on their table, right? And so you have to first, create a structure where people are getting page rates and advances that allow them to not have to go, I need to do a side hustle or I need to go do 20 conventions this year to help, offset the money I'm not getting paid to make the book. And again, I want to acknowledge that it is rarefied air that I'm breathing. If we were bootstrapping this, and I was one person, again, I look at like, my experience at Boom, Ross started in the spare bedroom of his apartment by himself. And he would be the first to tell you that like, the rates that Boom paid in those first few years were not enough to live off of. And it wasn't anything he was proud of or wanted to do, but it was just the reality of, these are my resources. This is what the books are selling. This is what I can pay you. And to Ross and to Boom's credit, as the business grew, you increase those things, right? And you pay what you can. On the Ignition side, again, we're taking a long-term view, right? So I don't need the investment I put into the book today to pay out tomorrow. And time will tell whether that is a genius move or a glorious and foolish experiment. But it's a different model, and then because we're not under those time constraints, it also allows us to sit down with the creators and say, look, I don't have like a set number of releases I have to do tomorrow. So I don't have a slot to fill. So let's start from the standpoint of what is a comfortable pace for you to work at, including weekends, including holidays. Hey, Swagg, are you going on vacation this year? When are you going on vacation? Can we build that into the schedule?
I'm not.
Yeah. I was going to say, you've got a YouTube show. What's a vacation? But
you must feed like, the algorithm.
Yeah.
Hey, what are you having a kid this year?
Yeah.
Let's build that into this, and let's build a schedule that actually accounts for people getting sick, right? So that they're not terrified to tell you that like, hey, I barely can get out of bed, but I'm still at the drawing table. I mean, how many pictures have we seen of creators literally in the hospital with a drawing pad or a computer in their lap, right? And again, it's not purely altruistic. I think that we will get better work out of people and better stories, which will then, turn into the franchises that we all hope they will. So it, again, it's the stuff we've all been complaining about for the entire time I've been in this business.
You mentioned investing in the creators a lot during this show. Is there an expectation of the creators investing in Ignition, whether it be their time, their branding, their social networking?
Portion of their IP?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, it's a partnership model. You know, like I'm a big believer in, like, if you want to control 100% and you want the majority of the to reap the majority of the rewards, then you're probably going to be able to get fewer resources up front. That's because, to Swagg's earlier point, like, the math doesn't math otherwise, right? And so, you know, we have a lot of conversations with creators about, like, hey, here's what we're investing, here's what we expect to get out on the other side. I think the ethical and the right thing to do is to have you know, reasonable reversion and termination language in the contract, where if we're not living up to what we've committed to, or we're not delivering the value, that creator has the ability to, you know, terminate the contract and you know, move on. And sometimes, by the way, it's just, okay, this wasn't a good fit. You know, like, it didn't work out. There's no villain here, right? But there needs to be a pathway for that. And you know, yes, there's essentially varying types of deals that we're going to do with creators, right? Like, the deeper the relationship, the more investment we can put in, right? So if I know that I have not one project from a creator, but 3 projects from a creator, that changes the math, right?
And that he's not going to have 5 different projects over someplace else.
Yes.
Right.
Because he's camping at your house now.
Right.
Yep.
And that has to work for both sides. You know, it has to make sense for both sides. And so in some cases, it's going to be like, okay, we haven't worked together before, or maybe there's not as much of a track record here, so let's test this relationship out and decide if we want to go deeper. And with other folks, you know, there's relationships that are in place there already, where it's like, okay, I know what I'm getting. And the creator knows what they're getting with.
Well, Cullen Bunn plus Oni's track record equals this at some point down the line.
Right.
How do those creators get a hold of you? We have a lot of creators who watch, you know, this show, and it's one of the things I always get asked is, like, how if a creator wants to pitch something to Ignition Press, how do they do that?
So we don't have an open submission policy. I'll put that out front, because that's not sustainable. And I will give a personal experience, right? Archaea, when Boom acquired it, had an open submission policy. There was a portal, you could submit projects. We kept that open for, I want to say 8 years after we acquired Archaea.
Wow.
In that time, we, I think, found 2 projects that we wanted to publish. And in the meantime, you have to have somebody monitoring that. You have to pay for the hosting. You have to respond to people, right? Is it possible we missed some diamonds in the rough there? Almost certainly, right? So our approach is, if it's somebody that is out there and they've had published work, the first step would be to reach out and say, hey, can I send you what I've done before, right? And again, like, just to go back, we're, you know, I think because of how we're coming into the market, we're not necessarily going to be the place where, like, it's mostly new talent that we're trying out, right? We've got a lot of established talent. We're going to be dipping our toes into breaking new talent as well, but that's going to be very selective. So I'd say step 1 is send us what you've already done. And that doesn't mean, like, a published comic book from another comic publisher that has gone through traditional distribution channels. It could be a web comic, it could be an Instagram comic, it could be, you know, the thing that you printed out and sold directly to consumers at conventions, right?
Can I pause you for a second on that?
Yeah.
This is a total sidebar. Who published Penny Arcade? What publisher got the Penny Arcade comic license?
As far as I know, they essentially self-published, and then they might have worked with, like, a New York book publisher to
put
out collections.
I think it was like Scholastic or something. But
Yeah.
that was the #1 web cartoon. Million daily viewers, and nobody in the comic industry grabbed that. And that was always just one of those missed opportunities that I always saw out there. So it's great that you're kind of looking in that space.
Outside the box.
Yeah.
Our email naming conventions are not hard to crack. I will give mine here. It's my first name with a period, last name at ignitionpress.com. Use it wisely. Remember that you only have one opportunity to make a good first impression.
Amen.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll put that information in the description as well.
Can I throw something out too?
Yeah.
Just this is the advice that I would give. Go to ComicsPro, go to San Diego Comic-Con, go to New York Comic-Con, walk up to Philip and introduce yourself. That's how you do it.
Yep. Amen.
Well, and also on one more thing, get a picture with Philip. Trust me.
I have the rare picture of Philip doing the Dennis Barger O face from San Diego.
Yeah, it's pictures with people are amazing. It connects you. It's a timestamp when a conversation comes up that you can say, well, yeah, you guys are talking about this topic today, but here's me and Philip 15 years ago talking about XYZ. So
I can, and by the way, I can neither confirm nor deny there is photographic evidence of me making the Dennis O face.
Yeah. I'll share it on Facebook right after the show's over. But it's funny though that you mentioned that, Jesse, because during this show, I got a text message right before my internet went out from our mutual friend Chris Roop. And he sent a picture of me and him from 7 years ago that came up on his timeline. And he shared that with me because that was a moment he was the first person I visited after I had my heart attack.
There you go.
Yep.
And that came up on his timeline, and that meant something to him to share with me.
Yep.
I want to circle back real quick to Swagg's advice, because this is the hardest part of, I did portfolio reviews for years, and the easy portfolio reviews are the ones where it's obvious, right? There's an artist that comes up and you're like, great, you got to work on your anatomy. Here's like some advice on perspective. That's, man, portfolio reviews, that's the dream, because like it's easy, it's actionable, and like you're going to see that person the next time you're at C2E2 or San Diego or whatever, and they'll have gotten a little bit better. And you're like, I see you've been working on your anatomy. Great. Now work on your perspective, right? The hard ones are where the work was professional, right? Or near professional quality. And there's, improvements that can be made on the margins. But we are in a business where like people want something they haven't seen before. Rob Liefeld talks about this a lot, right? It's like, what's your style? What's your voice, right? And that's true for artists and writers and colorists and everybody else, right? And that is much harder to develop, right? Because that takes a perspective, right? But then the second piece, and this is where I'll circle back to Swagg's advice, is at the end of the day, this is in success a working relationship, right? And and work relationships are just relationships. And people like to work with people that they like being around.
Yes.
Right? And so the hardest piece of advice to convey are those soft skills. It's like, hey, are you somebody that I'm going to want to talk to tomorrow and spend time with and solve a problem with, right? And you could be the most talented artist in the world or the most talented writer in the world, but if you struggle with those social skills or you struggle with collaboration or problem solving.
He had a huge career.
Crazy. I just wrote this down. Interview with Philip. Is it about the art? Is it about the writing? Or is it about the person?
I actually have a funny story with.
Can you answer that first, Dennis?
Philip.
Dennis,
go ahead.
Answer that. So,
Philip, what is it? Is it the person? Is it the writing? Is it the art? Or is it all of it?
I mean, look, the old adage in comics is to be successful as a freelancer, you need to be good, fast or nice, and you need at least two of those three to have a career, right? So, it varies from publisher to publisher. If you are like, if you're commercial and you're really talented, you probably get a little bit more rope on the nice part, right?
Right.
Like, because for some folks, not at Ignition, to be clear, we have a strict "life's too short" policy.
Amen.
But I think it's a combination of those things, right? And Swagg's advice is really good, which is like, I'm much more likely to want to invest in somebody who I've made a human connection with than a faceless email.
I think that goes for most people nowadays, which is weird.
Let me tell you this story that goes right along with what Swagg said. So in 2001, I was a booking agent for celebrities. I was at San Diego doing that stuff. And I run into a friend of mine from college. Bill Baker was one of the comic journalists at that time. He had done a whole bunch of really good books. And I spotted him. He said, "Oh, come up here." This is back in the old days when everybody used to sit out on the steps in front of San Diego between halls C and B. And he goes, "Oh, this is my buddy Bob. He works over at DC." I'm like, "Oh, hey, Bob, what's up?" And we're just chit-chatting about the weather and whatever we're talking about. And then this is back when the cabs could still drive up right on the curb. And this yellow cab pulls up, and these two kids get out of the back, and they beeline it for Bob. And they're kind of speaking really broken English. And I won't do the thing. And they're like, "Oh, Mr. Shrek, can you look at our portfolio?" And Bob Shrek said, "Oh yeah, sure, kids. Oh no, this is really good. Oh yeah, I like the way you did this. You need to work on this a little bit. You need to do something here." And then 10 years later, I had no idea who those kids were. But 10 years later, I ran into those kids at the Trickster party right across the street. Remember when Trickster had that party across from? And those two kids were Gabriel Ba and Fabio.
Moon.
Is it Fabio Moon?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they had just won the Eisner for
Girls.
Daydreamer.
No, girls.
What was it?
Probably girls.
No, that was the Luna Brothers.
Oh, okay.
It was Day Tripper or something like that.
Okay.
And it all came back to me. I'm like, "Hey, did you guys do your portfolio review right on those steps to Bob Shrek?" "Oh, yes, we just got off plane from Brazil or wherever they're from. And that's where we first met Bob. And he gave us the best advice we ever had." They walked up to Bob Shrek, these two nobodies from Brazil. Walked right up to Bob Shrek. They knew who he was. First of all, you have to know who the people in the industry are before, but they knew who Bob Shrek was. They did their first portfolio review on the steps while Bob was having a smoke break from the bullshit inside. And 10 years later, they're taking the Eisner home for best comic.
Yep. Yeah.
That's how you get into the industry.
Make your moments. Make your moments count.
Yeah. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah. Swagg, I want to ask you the same question. When you bring someone on the show, what are those three gauges that you're looking at, whether it's they're a writer, an artist, or is it by the person? How would you gauge that? Or how do you gauge it? Do you have to like them to bring on the show?
Yeah, I think it is the person. I have to want to talk to them. I think I have to be interested or inspired by, something that they're doing. And then I also feel like I have to know that the audience is going to gain value from what they have to share. So there's times in the past where maybe creators or publishers have wanted to be on the thing and obviously want to promote their books, and that's fine. Like, we can promote their books, but it's not a commercial. It's can you come on here and give some insight into the industry, and can you talk about the process, or share a little bit more than just sort of like give me the log line of your newest title. So those are the things I think about.
It's also
but
whether
yeah,
or not those people have a little bit of charisma, because listen, this is
Yeah.
a medium that you have to be able to talk, and some people just, they don't have that,
and can I say something? What's interesting about that? So I've done a lot of work with Riot Games and esports and a lot of that whole industry. And when esports was just getting huge in like 2014 or so, you had all these kids that were basically becoming pro players, and they started to like do all this content around them and put them on camera, and they have to do all like the media stuff, much in the way that whoever LeBron James would have to be on the media tour for the NBA.
Twins and Walshy and
yeah, but Riot understood this, and they literally would pay and put these guys through media training. This was like crazy, right? That you have these like very awkward, not very social gamers who like are just in their basement and play video games for 14 hours a day, and all of a sudden are thrust into like the spotlight. And the people at Riot knew it. They were like, these guys got to be a little more charismatic. They got to be a little more polished here. They got to be able to hold the conversation, and they invested in that. And I think it paid dividends. And I kind of feel the same with like comic creators now. I think the idea or the stereotype of the artist who's like, comic creator who's shy and they just draw in their room and it's dark and they have no social skills. I mean, you got to break through that. You got to get out of your own.
Once again, post Napster music artists, they had to bust out of those shells. They couldn't just sit in the studio and
what I think did that before Napster? I think the music video did that before Napster, because for the longest times you might not even know what an artist looks like. Pink Floyd, you never knew what the guys in Pink Floyd looked like. You never knew what the guys in Tool looked like. And now, in the social media world has changed that. Real quick,
it's kind of like all those 70s musicians that were just kind of medium build with beards, and they were huge artists. And then the second they did a music video, they're to the back seat, and David Lee Roth is out front.
Yeah. Yep. Philip, we've had you here for a little over 2.5 hours, so I want to get you out of here, but I want to ask one last question. What is next on the horizon for Ignition Press? What are people who are fans of you and what you've done and are fans of your partners, what can they look forward to for what's next with Ignition Press?
So I'd say the call to action, the ask would be, if you're interested in Ignition Press, go to ignitionpress.com, and there's a place to sign up for our newsletter. You probably won't get anything from us for a little bit. We announced a number of creators at ComicsPro, and Brian, I sent you an email with like a graphic there. If you want to throw it up, it'll show everybody that we announced. Keep an eye out on their channels, because again, we're going to be leading with those creator channels. If Curious Haunt sounds interesting to you, check out the first episode, subscribe. That's going to be dropping every other week from Jeremy, but expect that there's going to be additional things breaking from Cullen Bunn and Cy Spurrier and Leah Williams and Stephanie Williams and the Miranda brothers, who and I'm sure I blanked on somebody there, but those folks are all pretty easily found on social media. Sign up for their newsletter, and they have different newsletters, but it's meant to be a la carte. Pick the folks you're interested in. If you like their work in the past, follow them, and we promise we're going to be giving you some really cool content coming down the line. And then if you sign up at ignitionpress.com, you'll hear where we're going to be making our first kind of public appearances as a company and engaging with fans. I am on social media. I don't post a ton, but if you sign, thank you, Brian. If you sign up there, that's probably going to be the best place to keep track of.
I have one more question for Philip before we lose.
And then I have one too. So.
Philip, do you and your partners over the last 2 to 3 months go, guys, did we dodge the biggest bullet not rushing to be a publisher during this whole diamond thing? Do you like sit? I mean, have you honestly said, like, guys, I am so glad we took this nice and slow and came out when we're coming out, because we dodged the biggest dumpster fire we could have been involved in?
Again, we had the luxury, and that is rarefied air.
Yeah.
But I think even going back to the last time I was on, I said, part of this was based on the theory that, 2024 was a stabilizing and reset year, and there were the ramifications from the last 5 years continuing to shake out. And a lot of this was based around the theory that when we get to the back half of this year, beginning of 2026, people are going to be excited and looking for something new, right? So, would I have predicted the exact timing of, the Diamond bankruptcy announcement? No. Was I surprised to hear it? No. What I mean is, like, I could have predicted it was trending in that direction.
Right,
Would I have said, like, okay, on this day, like when it's going to happen? But if you were paying attention, there were signs there. And I have I still have. It's been roughly 20 years since I was a Diamond employee, but there are people there that I worked with that I care about, that I think are incredibly hardworking, good people, that I have nothing but empathy and just that is not a hard road to walk, that they're walking right now. And they deserve that grace, because, again, two things can be true. You might have misstepped recently, but you got to look at the whole thing and look at everything that, the Jeppy family and Diamond have done for the industry and folks that came out of there, and so anyway, so I feel very lucky for a bunch of reasons, Dennis. many reasons, but certainly I'm glad that I'm not having to solve those problems in real time right now.
Right.
So my final question, which Dennis just screwed it up for me to ask, so I'm trying to
pretend like I didn't hear what Dennis said. Go ahead, Jesse.
There you go. So everything aside, Philip, Diamond, following blindly or following it with interest?
Am I following it with interest?
Yeah, personally.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Both personally and from a business perspective, because I do think that if I was a betting person, I would say that there is going to be somebody that acquires Diamond, and that they're going to do something with that. What that is, who that acquiring party is, I don't know, but it will have some sort of impact on the industry, because there is from the publisher side, there is a section and a service that Diamond provides that the current existing distribution alternatives are not going to be interested in servicing, right? There's no reason to believe that either PRH or Lunar are going to want to take on publishers below a certain size and below a certain market share. There is no reason to believe that either one of those other parties is going to be interested in selling comic shops non-comic and book product, right? And so I certainly hope for the industry. I think it's better for the industry that there is a third option that provides those services, and I certainly hope that they find the right home for that. Right?
Amen.
Awesome.
Amen.
And whether that directly impacts Ignition or not is kind of beside the point, because ultimately, it again, if you saw my presentation, the whole thing is that I'll end on this note. When Jeremy and I got together for the first week to actually work together, part of what I was aware of is, like, we'd all been doing this for 25 plus years. It's like signing up for another tour of duty, right? And you're going to build it from scratch this time, right? That's hard. So why are we doing this? And the intersection that we reached with all three of us was, We wanted to create a place that fostered vibrant creativity. We wanted to do it with integrity and commitment, right? And you need the resources to do that. But the reason we were doing it is because we want to make the industry a better place. You know, we want to leave the house in better order than we found it, right? And so to that end, you know, I think a positive outcome and a path forward for Diamond, whether it's under that name or some other name, I think it, you know, it's good for the health of the industry, and I hope it plays out that way.
Well, I think that we all can agree that the industry is a better place with having Ignition Press be part of it. And we thank you, man, for everything that you guys are doing. Tell your partners the same, and we got to get them on the show at some point with you.
Yeah, let's do it. Your audience has to be tired of listening to me pontificate.
No, they're already saying in the
they still
chat
listen to
that's
my
a great
ass,
show.
so.
Yeah. Philip, thank you, man.
This was so much fun.
Go spend some time with your family, brother. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care, y'all. Bye.
Later.
Yep.
Oh, great stuff,
guy
man.
who just happens to sell comics.
Amen.
That's how I think of Philip. So
yeah.
Well, he's been in every level. I gotta believe that a guy as smart as Philip and as agile as Philip has maneuvering through this industry, he's had to have taken a great piece from every level that he's hit. And that's why I'm excited for Ignition, because this is kind of his first foray as the guy.
Yeah.
He's always been the second guy or the third guy or the fourth guy. And how many guests have we had on this show where they talk about Philip being
it's crazy.
The person, you know, there's so many of our guests are like, oh yeah. And then that one time Philip came up and said to do this, you know, and it's really great to have him on the show because it's a different perspective from a guy who's been at every level of this industry.
It's funny how that works because you seem to get there's this thing that happens where you hear the same names over and over. And those are the guys, you know, that are, you know, like Philip, Big Clutch, you know what I mean? Like these guys that are always doing good things for the industry, always doing good things for the friends and for the people that they work with. And those are the type of people that you want to foster relationships with.
And it's a lot like what I say just in general philosophy, be like water, Bruce Lee. Mm-hmm. Philip was dabbling into that when he was talking about the way they're setting this up. And I think of Philip as kind of Game of Death, Bruce Lee, where every level of the pagoda that he's gone up, he had a little bit more from the previous level that helped him get past the next level.
Yeah.
And now he's going up against Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the dark. And let's see how he does it.
Yeah.
Yep. You know, I have it's kind of funny when we're talking, Swag, you're at ComicsPro and you're going through the things and people are actually, and you probably might not have noticed this. I noticed this. People in the background are watching. They're kind of like, what is he doing? Why is that guy filming? Yet some guy stops you and they go, hey, Swag, I love your show. I can't remember exactly what he said. And it kind of threw you off a little bit. And then you moved on because the reception was a little bit different of kind of like, why is this guy filming? Yet you have this one retailer. I don't know if he was a retailer that stopped you. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell me about
off
that?
camera? Off camera, the times that I was there, yeah. I mean, there's a very, very clear. And I don't say this as like bragging or anything, but like, yeah, when I go to the shows and stuff, people will come up and be like, hey, I watch your YouTube. Hey, it's a cool channel and all that. And, but it's a very, very clear, like, difference of the people at this thing that came up to me and were like, hey, Swagglehawks, I love the show, blah, 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 versus like, you know, the ones that, you know, clearly they've never, you know, watched or whatever. And it's right down the line of like, if you're a retailer, you're on that camp. If you're a publisher, you're probably not, you know, and that was what it was. And so it was kind of like 50-50, you know, the people that kind of came up to me. But yeah, I think filming there was some of the people there were definitely like, what is this guy doing?
Yeah.
Well, but it also, Jesse, it goes to what you were saying, and you're kind of still like 50-50 on this. You were at the show, you were bitching that the guy was live streaming from his booth and he wasn't paying attention to you. I get that. And that we're talking with was it Michael from from Informa, who Fan Expo, were talking about getting a streaming area.
Oh yeah, Michael. Yeah.
But how many of those ComicsPro retailers, Jesse, understand what you and I understand about being out there to a different audience? I don't see any of those guys doing what we're doing. Swagg looked like a caveman running through the jungle with fire to those guys. What's that guy doing? Is he one of those influencers? I want to see what he's doing. Yeah, how did you make fire, Swagg? How do you get on the YouTubes? You know, that's what I see.
Right.
Well, I've got something that I want to
say, just real fast. I think they understand what we're doing. However, they're not, I say this all the time. People are in the business that are successful show up. And I don't think they're ready to show up in this type of platform where they can think freely. A lot of them are still in I'm in the comic book industry, so I can't say XYZ, where we're kind of saying, well, yeah, you can say both.
Especially now that Diamond's gone.
Yeah. I'm just surprised there's not more people from, say, the publishing side that are sort of understanding that they can offer that or do, be that part, connect the dots for some of the retailers. And I realize it's not their job. I mean, their job is just to make products, and, it's up to the retailers to figure out what they want to do with those things for the most part. But I don't know. I kind of think that times have changed, and we're kind of in a, you need to do more sort of world, which again, just goes back to shout out to Philip for coming on the show. I think the industry needs more people.
Oh, you're going here, Brian? You're going here?
Thinking about times have changed, and you got to do more, and you got to figure it out. There's something I do want to talk about, and this is a recent update from Unknown Comics. And this is something that a lot of people have been talking about recently. I've had a lot of people reach out to me. A lot of retailers reach out to me, ask me my thoughts on stuff. And even though I'm not a retailer, for whatever reason, I think Swagg, you're the same way. We've kind of become a hub for, what are you hearing? What do you think? What do you this? And this is something very interesting from Unknown Comics. Unknown Comics put out a post saying, and I'm just going to read parts of it. It says,
can we tell everybody who and what Unknown Comics is?
Yes. Unknown Comics is a very big retailer that is known very well for being an exclusive variant player. You guys have probably seen their booths at cons. You've probably, if you've bought retailer exclusive variants in the past, you probably own some of their books and covers they've helped produce. They are known for working with, was it Nakayama that they work with? I can't remember. Nakayama. They work with a lot of volume on retailer exclusives. But they also been in this game for a long time, right, Dennis and Jesse? Where do they come from? Is what I'm asking.
So this is Darren Hutchinson. Darren Hutchinson. So he comes from Hastings, which was a mid-level bookstore chain in the Midwest. I think they had 500 stores, Jesse. Is that right?
Yeah, around there, a little bit less.
Okay. So they came in hard and strong on the variant game for Hastings exclusives. This lasted for about a year, maybe a year and a half. They got all of the benefits that you could get. If you watch my new video, I talk about how Diamond gave all these benefits to certain people and none of it to other people. Hastings racked up, was it 2.5 million or 5 million?
2.5, around that.
$2.5 million in back debt to Diamond, and then closed everything. Everything got sold off for nothing, and it all became worthless overnight. Then, somewhere before 2018, that's when Darren shifted gears, and he was like, hey, I got this variant game. I could do this at the shows instead of at the Hastings. And I'll tell you, I'm friends with Darren. I visit his booth every show I go to.
Yeah,
he's always got some of the most beautiful variants I've ever seen. Things that I wish the industry would be putting out for us to buy.
Yes, they're very good.
Go ahead,
at what
Brian.
they're very good at what they do with those with the artists that they work with. And
yep, absolutely.
So they put out a post. So not only do they sell retailer exclusives, they also have a very large website where you can go and buy new issues. And a lot of people buy new issues with them. They'll put large orders through. And they recently had to come out with a post saying, "We at Unknown Comics are making some important changes in 2025. We understand that many of you have noticed the removal of weekly pre-order books from our website, and we want to clarify the situation. Since 2018, we have moved warehouses 3 times and have not had the opportunity to organize our existing stock. The demands of the processing weekly orders requires a significant portion of our staff's time. Of our 23 employees, 18 are involved in this process. This has prevented us from dedicating time to organizing our warehouse. For years, we have considered temporarily suspending weekly pre-orders to address this issue. In early February, circumstances aligned. Remember that. That's a very important statement there. In February, circumstances aligned, and we decided that 2025 would be the year to do so. We understand that you have some questions. Question 1, will pre-orders return? Pre-orders may resume towards the end of 2025 or the beginning of 2026 with a completely restructured system. Question 2, will my existing pre-orders be fulfilled? Yes, all pre-orders already placed will be fulfilled. We are simply not accepting new pre-orders at this time. Question 3, is Unknown Comics going out of business? We are certainly not going out of business. In fact, we have several exciting new projects to share with our fans in 2025. Additionally, we are increasing our involvement in conventions and signings. We need time to organize our operations and address issues that have been neglected due to staffing constraints related to weekly orders. We will also hold significant sales over the next 4 to 6 months to clear excess inventory that has accumulated over the past 8 years. Weekly comics consume a significant portion of our staffing budget while generating the lowest profit margins. Therefore, we will temporarily reallocate those staffing resources to higher margin tasks. Thank you for your support, Darren Hutchinson, owner of Unknown Comics. Now, this brings in a huge conversation for us to have. I don't want to have it too long because we're already at 3 hours, but it's probably going to take at least a half hour. So if any of you guys got to leave at any time, just say peace. But this is...
I don't think it's going to take a half hour, Brian. This was pretty cut and dry.
Well, let's talk about that because here's what I want to throw out there. He said things have aligned in February. Some of those things, Diamond debacle, the Diamond dominoes are falling. Another thing that we have been talking about a lot on here, and that I got to give credit to Jesse and Dennis, they've been talking about for many moons now, the fact that there are a lot of retailers that owe money to Diamond, and now that money is being collected, whether they like it or not.
Time to pay the piper.
Time to pay the piper.
Right. There was an article. Was it yesterday or today?
Today.
About they're calling in the margins.
Yep.
It's a margin call.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
and it just so we could clarify this, Brian and Swag. I think we said it first on your show before we started talking about it. The debt from retailers. I just did a 12-minute video on this on my channel. That Jesse and I knew exactly that problem. And that was the first thing we said. How much was that amount? And those early filings didn't have that amount in it. And the second we heard that amount, 22 from people they can't collect from, 11 from people that are current account holders, we know how bankruptcies go. Corporate bankruptcies, any kind of bankruptcy. If you don't have a deal on the table to get you out of bankruptcy and account for all of the credits over there and all the debits over here, you're not allowed to go forward. The judge will say, why are you going to continue shipping this guy comic books if he already owes you X amount of money? No, you're not allowed to do that anymore. You need to collect that money from him before you send him another comic book. Okay, what about this over here? Okay, well, you owe them that much money. What are you going to do to send those comic books out and pay him, get more money in this coffer? And I think that's where Nikki might be at in that situation. So it's dangerous. It's a dangerous game. But the second this whole thing happened, what was it? What did he call it? The convergence of problems in early February.
Yeah.
The alignment.
Well,
alignment. Yeah.
That's the kicking the can until it's too late. And then when it's too late, there's only one option. If you're not getting any more comic books, if you're not allowed to order any more comic books, this is what you have to do. And when he says, yeah, we're going to do more variants. Well, yeah, because you can get a hold of, Ben Dunn down at Antarctic Press and say, hey, can I get 100 variants from you of this book for this month? And Ben will make it for him without going through Diamond, without going through Lunar.
Yeah, it's all drop ship.
It's all drop ship. Yeah. So now he's going to have to work with the people that will take his cash now. And he's just going to have to kick this can until the Diamond situation is over.
Well, me coming from corporate, I will tell you there's a no written in that letter. Forget about being Darren. Forget about being Unknown Comics. You do not talk about going out of business. When you do,
it usually means you're going out of business.
Yeah. Right, exactly. And that line right before that, we're going to definitely have a whole bunch of sales when we reorganize all this.
Well, we know what
crap.
That is. And
who was the variant guy who just went out of business and had an auction for all of his
Frankie's? Yeah.
Frankie's. Yeah. The same situation. That's I'm not saying that this is what's going to happen to Darren and Unknown, but that's what happened to Frankie's.
Right. Yeah.
He had boxes full of shit he couldn't sell, and he had to declare bankruptcy, and the judge ordered all of his shit sold.
Yeah. The common fan doesn't think that. The comic collector doesn't think of going out of business at all. That's not a question they actually intertwine with. They just want to know when they're going to get their books. In this case, what he's saying is if you collect new issues and you collect new issues from us, you need to go to XYZ till XYZ. End of story. Done. But the second you engage in a conversation that makes the customer think, right? That creates havoc, because now the customer says, okay, I'm not looking for someone to sell me new issues to 2026. Who can sell me new issues going forward? Now, I stop collecting new issues. So that's, I think, the biggest thing I saw from this was the notion that you need to think, and it's giving the consumer this confidence that you're going to be there. Saying that hurts that conversation. In the business, it really hurts you. Well, I'm like Dennis. I'm very good friends with Darren. Love Darren, a good guy. So it's technically not about Darren. No. It's about how it looks to the public.
Well, and also it's not just that. Also, at the same time, a few months ago, we heard about Unknown Comics offering these pallets of exclusive variants at a very cheap price to other retailers. So, there's these things that kind of happen, and you hear, and you put a mental note in, and it doesn't look good, and it sucks, because this is the type of thing that we all are kind of worried about. We're going to start seeing some of these bigger retailers, start having issues over this whole thing.
Yeah. And a prime example, let me just tell you a prime example. When I dropped new issues as being one of the first people to drop new issues in a store that continued to stay in business, my bills every week was 10 to 15,000 every single week, 550 box holders. What did I do? I came out Monday and I said, listen, folks, we dropped new issues. Let me tell you about the great stuff that we're going to do going forward. Done. End of story. You move on. Did we find places for those people to go? The 550? Yeah, absolutely. we found the stores they should go to, but you gotta leave something that creates this gap that is so positive that positivity outweighs what you just announced.
Well, and there's one thing in there also that I think the audience needs to understand. So Unknown Comics does the biggest shows. He does C2E2, San Diego, all of the fan expos, all of it. Yep. Every one of those shows, if you want to keep your awesome spot right when you walk in the doors, you have to pay for that next year's show within the month after the current year's show. So I guarantee you, when times were good over the last year, they had to drop all the pre-advanced tickets or, the booth space for all those major shows. And that's why he says, we're still doing shows, which he's not filing bankruptcy. That is exactly what that says. But he is going to have to do those shows that he's already prepaid for, because why wouldn't you?
Right.
Well, do you think that this is like, this whole diamond situation is sort of like a life raft for a lot of these people? Because in a way, it's like, if I'm unknown, it's like, hey, the diamond thing screwed us up, as opposed to like, if the diamond thing didn't happen, I don't know, it just feels like everyone's on this treadmill.
They're going to still need to pay that debt.
It's what we said on your episode.
Yeah.
It's what we said on your episode. These guys, so the industry wants these guys to go into Hawk. Diamond could have easily said, you know what? Maybe you don't do 20 variants this month. Maybe you do 10 and pay us back some of that debt.
Nope.
But Marvel and DC and Image, or whoever, Unknown makes comics with, they want that order from Unknown. Diamond, make this happen. Let them go into debt a little bit, whatever. But Diamond got help stuck holding the bag. And like I said, all, for the last 2 months, all these people over here, they owe Diamond money. Diamond owed all these people money. And at some point in the middle, Diamond was like, 39 mil. We're not getting out of this hole. Chapter 11. Let's do it.
Let's just look at the math of it again. We keep talking about how few stores there are. There's only 1,200 stores. There's only 1,200 stores. Let's say there's 18 if you include online dealers, who may be some of the most probably in-debt ones of all, with exclusives. How much is each one? Because like I owe nothing. So there's 20% that owe nothing.
Yeah.
And there's the 80% that owe it. And if it's $11 million,
well, yeah.
So how many mom and pops have $100,000 debt with
Emmett? Here's the thing. So if 20% of the accounts are zero debt, and 20% of the accounts are these big Hastings, Unknown, Frankie's, Bryce Comics, all these guys, and they owe $1 million, okay, or $500,000 or $250,000. I don't know what Diamond would allow, because I would have loved it.
It's proportionate. Yeah. Go ahead.
Right. So all of a sudden that gets averaged out. And then that 60% in the middle, that's the mom and pops that Diamond let get $5,000 in debt, $10,000 in debt, $15,000 in debt. Okay. That's all going to average out to another number. And then the big chunk of that is part of that 22 million, et cetera.
Yeah. So, Brian, can you put this up real fast?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're going to be able to see this number. So where did I write it? See that 60%? Me and Dennis think a lot alike, way too much.
Yeah, well, Jesse, we know the numbers. Yeah. We have the experience once again, and we've gone like episodes without saying experiencer.
Yeah,
we are the experiencers in this industry that know these numbers, can rattle off our predictions on where these numbers lie. And just go back to 2 weeks ago. I said 18. Jesse said 22. Neither of us right, because it was 33. And but nobody said 18 or 22 until we said it, and then the next day it comes out it's 33. Swag, when we were talking to you about the back debt, did you think it was anywhere near 33 million?
I mean, that's just numbers I can't really wrap my head around. It's just
Sure.
But
FYI,
enjoying
I
the
know what it is.
It's
simplicity of it.
comics.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
here's the funny thing is Swagg used the word life raft. It's basically the Titanic right now. And when we look about, I have in my notes about 15% of the stores owe close to 75% of the debt. And what happens is these stores have to understand that at some point, the names of the stores that owe Diamond money is going to come public. It's going to have to come public, right? Right now, what Diamond is saying, before your names go public, let's get you paid off, or at least let's get you into a payment plan, but don't ignore us. Because if you ignore us, then that's what really is going to get you in trouble. So if you're a store out there that owes them $1,000 and you can't pay that out, hey, add $150 to my bill every week, because it will show good faith to the new owners. And so when we talk about the company we just talked about, we need to know what that game plan is, other than, well, we're just not going to carry new issues. I don't know if that solves anything by not carrying new issues, because you have debt in place now that has to be paid. And if you're not getting new issues and that's how you make money, then you're in a tough spot and you're going to have to figure that out.
Yeah, we're going to be hearing...
Economics and Comics had the greatest
The
comment.
Diamond list is set so
The Diamond Epstein list is coming soon. And guess what? I think there's going to be a lot. Like I said, at some point, I think Midtown might have been on that list, and Midtown had to leverage some stuff to pay off to start getting the new books back in.
Well, again, there's something that you guys said that I remember when you first said it, I was thinking to myself, like, that'll never happen. And I feel like this is something that is again, another one of those moments in me that just going, like, kind of knocking some sense into me. And I'm going to reiterate, you've already said it tonight, you know, if you owe Diamond, if you're a store that owes Diamond a ton of money, do you think that Lunar and PR at Penguin Random House are going to be okay with you being on credit for them for any amount of time? They're going to lock you out of accounts over there too when they find out your name's on that list.
Once that Epstein list, that Diamond list comes out, I guarantee you Penguin and Lunar are going to take that list and they're going to go, oh, wait. Their net 60 is 2 weeks late. Give them a call.
Yeah.
You know,
well, what will happen is they'll become a risk factor. So just like anything else, you could be the greatest person in the world, but guess what? Your car gets repoed, and then you go to, you know, Dodge or wherever, and they're like, man, you have a great time, but you got this car repo. You know,
eventually you end up at the guy down the street,
right? Exactly,
with a little building and a parking lot, paying 40% interest. Paying 40% interest, and you get that little thing put on your car that they shut it off when you're 1 week late.
Right. And so I said this last week. Listen, you're 1 day late with Lunar or Diamond, you just get a freeze on your account. I mean, it's just automatic. There is no account rep that is going to call you and say, hey, dude, what's going on? How much time do you need? No. Listen, you owe $250. Your account is frozen, right? And so we just have to get back into the real world of economics, how things are done in business 101. And if we follow that path, everybody will be okay. Will we lose a lot of new issue stores? Yes. But those new issue stores that we lose will just become back issue stores. They'll be one of the 77,000 people that sell comic books on eBay as of today or as of tomorrow, whenever the last count was. It's the nature is we talk about this, but we're talking about a portion of the industry, which is new issues. We still have back issues, and issues can sustain a store.
And that's where Jesse and I have been trying to steer. What, 2009 for you, Jesse?
Yeah.
2017 for me.
Yep.
We've been trying to tell this industry, you've got to come up with your own life raft. You cannot be on the Titanic when it happens.
Right.
And Lunar and Penguin House were just kind of extra crutches added in there after COVID. But, you know, my worry is, and I said this on the show several times, if we're at 1,200 now, 1,800 accounts, 1,200 stores, if we're at that level and we lose half of that because these guys don't have a pot to piss in it or a window to throw it out of, how long before Marvel and DC say, do we really want to make this for 600 stores or 900 accounts? Do we want to keep making these comic books for lesser and lesser people?
No.
USA imposes new tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China, including on comics.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I was going to cover this tomorrow.
This is a big deal. We're back into the
You're
tariff
too late.
phase.
We broke the news.
Yeah.
Too late.
You lose. Good day, sir.
25% tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and raises China tariffs affecting comics industry. Trudeau retaliates with $155 billion U.S. goods tariffs, escalating trade tensions. Comic book printing costs rise. Publishers faces challenges with options, quality, and pricing. Jesus, here we go.
Here's where Rich got it wrong, though. And I had a conversation with somebody at Marvel. I'm like, when did you guys decide to start shifting your printing to the U.S.? And was that the best decision you made in the last couple of years? And they were like, yeah. Print them in the U.S. You don't have to worry about any of this. And, you know, I'm not defending this tariff or any of that stuff. I think it's a lot of blustering, and I think a lot of things are going to happen. But it's not going to affect Marvel one bit. Marvel's comics aren't going up one bit, other than when half the stores go out and they have to make that same amount of money on, you know, half the accounts ordering half the books. So,
well, the one thing you can guarantee from corporations, their books will go up because DC's may have to go up. So they'll go in just under and make that extra margin. They don't give it to us, but they'll make that extra margin.
It'll never go to the consumer.
Right. So I think at the end of the day, what you have to look at is, when is FOC? When does it start? When's the next FOC? Because technically, you know,
those books will be under
if you do an FOC today, books aren't even coming to you in 60 days. A lot can happen in 60 days. Books in transit, I don't know if it affects books in transit. You know, so, you know, this is out of my realm. I just sell comics, right?
Well,
I think it would have to be at the docks.
And here's the thing. Well, here's the thing that Rich also doesn't know. Is it based on the printing cost as it comes across? Is it based on the retail price on the book? Is it based on the wholesale price? Is it based on the pre-distribution price? I don't know what level that tariff gets put on. I don't think it's the retail price. I don't. I think it's if the publisher charged DC 25 cents to print that book, or if the printer charges DC 25 cents to print that book, I think it's just a 25% increase of that 25 cents, honestly.
Did you see this comment by Real Fake Comics that says, I saw a store do something creative to pay Diamond. They offered 200 lifetime memberships for $100 a piece that gives 20% off for life and free shipping, and they sold out of them pretty quick. Third Eye Comics.
Yeah, you know,
former
again,
guest.
Get your wording down, folks. I don't know if that's how I was wording, but you don't want to mention Diamond in any sense.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing is you're saying, hi, I owe Diamond a lot of money. I need to pay it off right now. Okay.
But here's the problem. You know, even I don't think that you can immediately say that just because they owe Diamond money that they're in a bad place, because just because they owe Diamond money doesn't mean that they're degenerates or that they're, you know.
I didn't say that.
I know you didn't say that, but that's what people think.
You should always protect your brand and its brand's values, not value, but its values. And the values is, hey, I'm buying this from you, Third Eye, right? Because you have paid Diamond. And that's a values issue, right? And so I think it's very important that you come out and you say, hey, we have this great membership and we're doing XYZ, done. But to mention Diamond in the time when Diamond is in the news and the Unknown Comics is in the news, you need to make sure that you are social aware of keywords that you should not be saying.
It doesn't help your brand.
Right, exactly.
I can't say that it hurts your brand, but it doesn't help.
Yep.
Well, I don't know if this is going to help or hurt the brand, but I will say it's very interesting. A lot of people are saying that this could be the final Previews, Diamond Previews magazine printed.
Ooh.
And look at that. It's got a Mark Spears image on it.
Spears.
Yeah.
So
Mark Spears,
Mark Spears fans are going to be, if that is the final Diamond.
Mark Spears killed the industry.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, you should save that if you get them in. Don't give them out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I just want to talk about
what are you
the last previews guide is going to be valuable.
Right. Yeah. But Emmett, what are you going to do with it? If you can't order from it, because most of those orders are for publishers that aren't going to be distributed by Diamond after the bankruptcy. You know,
that's exactly why it'll be valuable, because it had no use.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one thing about Mark Spears, and this is kind of a Brian Swagg question, can you think of anybody who reinvented themselves, because I know he's been doing this for a long time, but was more or less helped by social networking, by content creators to be at where he was at, to be recognized as he has been?
I think a lot of the artists in the last couple of years, I think Pichu and Moko got a big jump push. Yeah. You know, I think that there's a lot of artists. Rose Besh. You know, there is some artists that have definitely gotten some help. But I think that ultimately, I don't think any of us, I guess what I'm saying is the amount of the percentage of like us talking about them rather than their talent, you know, is the reason that they got where they are. If Mark's color palette and his art wasn't that good, I would have never seen him and started talking about him. You know what I mean? If Pichu Moko didn't have some crazy cool style, I don't think anybody would be really talking about her. So I think obviously it's the talent that comes first, but I think that the smart thing about what you're getting at, Jesse, is that Mark has his finger on the pulse of what his fans want. And that's the key. He knows what his fans like, what his fans want, what his fans look for, and he listens to his fans. And I think that's because of social media and it being so easy to interact with these people. Swag,
it's also easy to be a Mark Spears fan because it's undeniable, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of people on the fence with Besh and with Peach Momoka. Like there's fans and there's haters. But like if you're a fan of Mark Spears and you go, oh, this is why I like it, everybody goes, yeah, I can't say, there's nothing I can say against it. It's it's really primo stuff. Where I think he's going to have a lot more staying power than I think you see the retraction of some of the other artists that were propelled earlier.
And as I talked about on other shows, and I think we got it from a couple publishers, that cover price or that cover, that costs a publisher a lot of money to get.
Yeah. No. Sure. What's your thoughts, Swag?
I think what's interesting about with Mark's story, and maybe this is me kind of trying to romanticize this whole thing and looking at this Diamond preview catalog, but I think there's been a lot of artists that have kind of done what Mark has done, what Brian was getting at. But I think the timing of this and where it goes from here is kind of very interesting. And Mark, I know he's in the chat. He may not be, he may not want to hear this, but like, because I think in his mind, for him, it's like it's still this the idea of like, oh, I work my way up and then I get the Marvel gig and I draw Spider-Man and that's the thing. And I'm just like, that's just, it's done. Like that pipeline is just, it doesn't exist anymore. And, we spent this whole show talking to Philip about how the creators have to like kind of now do what Mark's doing. And, Cullen Bunn, perfect example of a guy who it's like, he's been on the top, but like, I kind of think he would trade places where Mark is right now. You know what I mean? In that kind of weird way. And that's kind of, where we're going from here. And so I think I don't know, it's very interesting time.
Do you guys think that you need to reach out more, or do you think these artists need to reach out more?
Both. Yeah. I think it's both. I think that a good content creator will find good content, right? Or will create good content. We'll figure out a way to create good content. And the way you do that is by reaching out to, if the content you want to make includes bringing on creators or finding new creators, you have to go find those creators. At the same time, creators need to also create roads for them to reach their fans and create new fans. And we've talked about it ad nauseum. People like genuine people. They like
people,
and
they
I saw
fake people.
Really quick. You know what I saw the other day? This is really interesting. I almost wanted to do a video, but there was other things to talk about. But the guy who's writing the Marvel Rivals comic book, or who wrote the Marvel Rivals comic book, he had a video. He posted a video on Instagram. I was like, you're instantly my favorite person now, because he basically was like, hey guys, like, I'm Mickey, and this is what thing wrote this comic, and I know a lot of you guys are maybe coming from the video game, but like, if you want to go to a comic book store and pick it up, like, be sure it comes out this day. And he's like, and here in comics we have this thing called FOC. It's a little bit confusing, but you want to talk to your shops, and here's the website you can go to look up local comic stores. And he did the whole thing, and I was like, this is what every single creator has to do.
Amen.
Chef's kiss.
Especially now.
Yeah. So let me ask you this though: is that coachable?
Yes, but is someone willing to be coached?
That's the question.
Well, it's what once again, I'm bringing up the Billy Corrigan, which I was actually not going to watch it, and then I kind of got sucked in, so I listened to it all day. He was talking about that post Napster, and his fans were like, oh, hey, we want you to do more stuff, Smashing Pumpkin stuff like you used to do, not this other stuff. And the industry was like, hey, you need to do this. And he was like, no, fuck that. We don't want to do that. And he took a 10-year hiatus, and now he's come back and he's bigger than ever because he didn't sell out. So there's a lot of different models to follow coming out of this thing. I just think that there's a lot of these comic creators that are going to be like, yeah, I don't need to do that YouTube thing. Fuck that. That's just a bunch of geeks. I'm going to keep doing the comic book conventions, and I'm going to keep Twittering, who I hate and who I love, and blah, 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 blah. That model might not work, guys. You might want to start looking at the other business models here, talking to people like Swagg and us.
I think if you're grandfathered in, you could probably just continue to do it, from here on out, if you have a big enough name or following. But yeah, if you're writing the Marvel Rivals comic book and, it's kind of your first big thing, I mean, this is the next phase of your career.
Bold move, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off.
Amen.
Yep.
Amen. So,
I bought a bunch.
Yeah.
I didn't hear what you said, Emmett. What'd you say?
I bought a bunch.
Rivals.
I put my order in.
Yeah. Smart. Great covers on it. They did a good job with the covers.
Yep.
The game is hotter than ever. I'm surprised I haven't seen anybody really like retailer wise try and do something cool around the game, whether that's with maybe the whole diamond thing happening right now is a reason why we're not seeing it, but haven't seen anybody try and do some type of cool retailer variant around these characters, or work with like Swagg was saying, the esports guys that people are watching, play these games.
Sure.
There's a lot of
Did you
stuff
see that
can be done.
Liefeld did a podcast about it, Brian?
No, haven't seen it
No.
yet. Heard it
I
yet,
think it's
no.
Swag,
one of
send
his
me a link.
latest episodes.
Really.
Yeah.
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 To go back on previews, folks, just so you know, what we're saying is that would be the last previews produced by Diamond. That is up for auction.
Yeah.
Previews magazine, just like anything else, and someone else can pick that up. It doesn't have to be the person who buys Diamond. They might be able just to buy previews, which wouldn't make sense to me. But that is going to continue to exist in the future. It probably won't be as thick as they have been, but yeah, it's kind of cool that most likely, well, it's not even most likely, 100%, that is the last previews you're going to see.
And it's got a Mark Spears cover.
And it has a Mark Spears cover on it, which makes
if it had some like comic you never heard of with an artist you never heard of, it wouldn't be as collectible. This is going to be, people are going to try to get it for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of like that Walking Dead 194, right? Where they don't tell us it's the last issue.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's like, what do you mean it's the last issue?
That was so cool to me. Yeah.
And Kirkman was so cool with that because he was like, hey, retailers that have supported me, here's some free stuff.
Yeah. He did it with Firepower too.
Yeah.
Which was like right around COVID, right after COVID ended.
Yeah. And then that Negan special that Negan special, that was a killer.
Yeah. And like, I call that, the license stuff for me is I don't sell it the day it comes out. I just buy it and put it in the back bins. It's somebody comes in and goes, oh, do you have Walking Dead? They go over and get 10 issues and they buy them all at once. Same with Turtles. There's so many people that aren't regular comic buyers, don't come on Wednesday, that buy these licensed properties. You got to have them, a good number of them to satisfy that down the road.
It's like putting Walking Dead on eBay, but not paying AMC on it. Right? If you just put Walking Dead, you're only hitting comic book fans.
Yep.
Right? You got to put AMC because those non-comic book fans are going, what the hell is this? It's just like me with socks, right? I sell so many socks on eBay, and it's crazy because it's all about wording. There's nothing to do with the sock, right? So, great stuff. I guess I have one final question for Swag. You went to ComicsPro. You spent a couple days there. ComicsPro is again in XYZ. I don't know what month it is. Are you attending that ComicsPro?
Again? I don't know if I would, because I just don't know if I personally need to be there. Just because I'm not necessarily a retailer. But although I do have my own publishing company, and we will probably continue to go. And we networked and did the whole thing as well. So I'm on the fence. Check in with me, I guess, next year. I'll have to see.
Okay. My follow-up question is I gave you a preview of what I thought you would see at ComicsPro. How close was I?
What was I kind of remember, but sort of remind me what
remember
you said.
It was all is calm, remain calm, all is well. And you said something like it was amazing how many people didn't mention Diamond, or Diamond was mentioned like Voldemort.
Yeah, that's where you missed it. I mean, you assumed that they would even mention it, so say there was all calm, but yeah, no, it was a little. It was the nervous laughter that was like, hey, given everything that's been going on, like that. That was
but did you get a handle? Like, okay, so you watch our show, you've been on our show, and you've gone to ComicsPro. Who do you think has a better handle on what's going to happen, and who's got a better plan to get themselves out of it?
I think the people here, honestly, I mean, I'm biased, but I think that the people that are engaged in this type of show and content are clearly more boots on the ground than what's kind of going on in that room. I made mention, the game plan is still look at Captain America: Brave New World. It's going to get, it's going to come out and crush the box office. And it's like, they're still so focused on that,
Yeah.
You know, that idea.
The week after it came up, half of what the Marvels did, you know, and you're like, oh, how are you still thinking that's going to push the needle anywhere?
Yeah. Yeah. And it was just, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that, you know, Marvel and DC, they just got to keep the lights on and keep things going. And, you know, so I guess I can't really fault them too much for, you know, just pulling out the same old tricks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's funny about it is really when you look at ComicsPro and you're trying to gauge the excitement and what's going on here, and you see the post on Facebook and someone with their friend, it's, oh, I met XYZ at ComicsPro and we had dinner and this is the group that went over to DC, but no one actually talked about substance at all until I saw Swagg's video. It was the actual only video I actually saw of ComicsPro. So there's this plan to action that doesn't, it's kind of like you got to have the secret password, the secret code. You got to be wearing the right ring and you push forward with that. But publicly, I want to know if 100, 200 retailers go, what information does the other 1,000 retailers get to also be successful? It can't be one-sided just to people just because you're part of a group. As a whole, we need to work together, and that information needs to be put out there. Was I disappointed because what I said was the second someone announces something, instead of being I'm bleeding cool 1 minute later? Yeah, right. But as a whole, we need to inform comic book stores on everything going on from every publisher. If they announce it at one place, let those comic book stores know what's going on as well.
How guilty would you feel, Jesse, if for the last 15 years, 16 years, the last year on this show, this is episode 53 now, isn't it?
Yep.
We're past the 1 year mark. You know, if we sat there and said, all is well, guys, keep ordering comic books, just keep doing the same thing, I'd feel guilty as hell if I was the guy saying, can you reorganize those deck chairs over on the starboard side? Can you make sure the band is playing Simply or whatever the song was that they were playing? You know, I'm not going to be the conductor of the band when the Titanic goes down. I'm not going to have the best design for the deck chairs. I want to be the guy that said, was that an iceberg? Should we get into the life rafts? I want to be the guy that says, there's not enough life rafts on this boat before we get on it. You know?
Exactly. Yeah, I
can't in good conscience let my brothers and sisters die on the vine like they're going to in the next 6 months.
Can I ask something? This is because, you know, circle of trust here and you know, everyone in the chat, you know, I said one thing in my video and someone disagreed with it and it was like one of the most upvoted comments. And I was like, okay, am I wrong here? Can you guys check me on this? Did I have an L take? But I made mention that, listen, Jim Lee, amazing, legend, great artist, Hush, incredible. He's working on Hush too. And I just said, look, as cool as that is this really the best use of the president of DC Publishing's time?
I've been saying that. I've been saying that for years.
You know
and the most upvoted comment on my video was, this is exactly what he should be doing. And I was like, am I wrong? Like, am I crazy?
Because they're comic fans. They're comic fans. They want to see Jim Lee art.
They can't.
Yeah,
they've got tunnel vision. They can't see beyond straight ahead. But
he hasn't been running DC for I don't know how long.
I said two things. I think I said it in your comments too. If you're relying on Jim Lee to finish a book to save this industry, I've got a whole bunch of all-star Batman and Robins to sell you.
Yeah.
You know, and the second comment is, yeah, we were all excited for DK2 as well.
What about DK3?
Yeah, DK3.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, exactly.
did that screw me?
Yeah,
I think he's just a figurehead.
No, it didn't screw me because I said it to their face. I'm like, how many DK2s do you want? How do I know this is an 8-part DK2 just waiting to happen? And I was right.
I think it was longer.
Yeah, and posting DK2s on eBay is a pain in the butt. You know, on Dennis's question, listen, success is based on how much you fail and what you do afterwards. So admitting that you failed on stuff and then being able to say, this is what I did to make myself better. This is what I did to make my business successful. I think that's what we kind of tend to talk about on the show. Yeah, we'll talk about some of our accomplishments, but it's really the things that we see that people aren't pivoting to in this moment of time. I think what happens right now in the comic book world, as far as retailers go, they see no end. Oh, I owe XYZ. They're going to hold my shipments back. Oh my gosh, what am I going to tell my customers? Instead of saying, how do I work myself out of it and what are my options? And there are so many options to be successful in the comic book world. It is crazy. In no time in my 43 years could I write in 40 years what was available to us in 40 years that is now available to us today. It is amazing where we're at.
And for 1/10 the price.
Yep, exactly. 1/10 of the price. And it's just a matter of getting a phone, pressing live, going to a convention and buying out a booth and getting some back issues, or going to OfferUp, or going to Zia Records or Ollie's or whatever it is. And so we have these great opportunities. So I don't want anybody to walk away saying, oh my gosh, what's going to happen to the comic book store? That's really up to the comic book store to take the opportunities in front of us. The thing that I was really bringing up about Spears is, you did talk about these other artists that have been pushed by content creators, but Spears goes live with content creators.
Yeah.
I don't know what Besh looks like. I've never seen her before. So I was kind of saying, is there an advantage of what Spears is doing versus everybody else?
Huge.
And I think that's a cool thing.
A huge advantage, a massive advantage. Yeah.
Back to what Swagger was saying early on about authenticity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shout out to Ken, who just dropped a $4.99 super chat. He says, great show as usual. Hit the likes for them, guys. Hell yeah. Appreciate you, Ken. I think that's a very important thing. And we can continue to, yell it and scream at the sky, as they say. More creators, artists, writers, it's only going to help you if you come on these shows and you know how to talk. Like, I'm not saying that it's, you want to come on a show if you're a shy person, or, you maybe don't like to have conversations. Maybe then it isn't for you. But if you're okay having the conversation and being on a show like this, and, then yes, it's going to help you. It's going to help you immensely if you're that type of person. And I think that it's helped Mark in a major way. I think it's helped many. Tony Fleece coming on shows, when Trish Forstner, it's helped them immensely. People love Trish and Tony. And they might not even know that they do comics when they first see them on a show, and they just say, hey, I like that person. And then when they find out they do comics, they say, okay, I'm going to go buy that person's comics. So to me, it's only going to help.
I didn't know what a Mark Spears was when I was on Swagg's end of the year review show, when I said he was the third most important thing that happened in 2024. I just heard you talking about this Mark Spears variant or that thing or monsters. And I was like, okay. And I was watching other people talk about it, and I'm like, I'm not hearing anybody else talk about anything else but Absolute, Ultimate, and Mark Spears. That's clearly the three big needle movers of 2024.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think it's great when you, like at MegaCon, where I was walking up and I didn't have to look at signs to see who that creator was. I didn't have to actually look at the book on the counter, because I'm not going to say, who are you? Right. But to be able to see people who reverse, which was kind of cool. And I told Dennis this and Brian, how many people approach me and say, hey, I watched the show on Beyond Wednesdays industry show. But to be able to recognize people by their face, I think is a great notion. And it tells you where that person is. in their career. And it does take time, and I understand writers and artists are doing stuff, but if you can do a 2-minute video, I mean, that's awesome on Instagram or whatever. And I think we'll see more of it in the future. But I think it's up to, you three guys that have, all four of you have shows now, to reach out to those guys and gals that might be a little bit shy and might not even understand it.
Well, I tell you what, that's one of the things I really try and do on this channel. It was one of the reasons I created the channel. It's been 3 years now since I've created the channel, and it's still one of my go-to goals. It's the reason why we're having Suspiria on tomorrow night. It's the reason why I reach out to Swagg to have Swagg come hang out with us. It's the reason why I do panel shows. I enjoy the conversation. I enjoy having conversations with like-minded people and with people that I respect. And hopefully it helps in some little way all the people that come on the channel in some little way. So that being said,
before I do want to mention one thing, since there's been about 30 posts about this. When you're selling something, you're selling things, right? You're selling stuff. And so if you own a store like Dennis's store, Emmett, your job is to sell stuff. And if you just think I can only sell comics, and if I insult someone with my spam sock, right, then don't do this, right? You need to be able to, however you market your background, right? You're always marketing. And
so saith the sock father.
Yeah, exactly. So everything at some point ties together, right? When we get to the counter, what we're saying is, or when a customer gets to the counter, and if they buy 10 comics, 3 socks, and a soda, you're in good shape as a comic book store, as a person who sells stuff. And so don't limit yourself.
I did a video 2 years ago, or not a video, but a Facebook post. I bought 1,000 croc charms for next to nothing a piece. I sell them $5, 3 for $10 in my store, or no, $2, 3 for $5. Sorry. I've sold over 4,000 Beanie Babies. I'm probably at 5,000. I stopped counting. I've sold over 200 Skylanders for $5, 3 for $10. These are things that you don't think about, but when somebody you want to hit that nostalgia factor, that's something that'll hit it. And you have to be aware of that. You have to be mindful of that, and you have to have the money to do it when your money's not all tied up with a diamond box every Tuesday.
Sure. Sure. Absolutely.
If Jesse was still doing 10,000 a week with Diamond, he wouldn't have the money to buy socks.
No. Yeah. And one of the things, and Brian, I was talking to Brian about last month, I sold 1,300 socks. I'm going to tell you right now, no one on eBay Live said, you know what, I'm going to go on eBay Live to see who's selling socks. So it's just presenting yourself, presenting your brand, saying, listen, I'm going to think out of the box a little bit. We'll then get you some cool Scooby-Doo socks, and we'll then match that up, XYZ, with that Scooby-Doo comic you just bought out. And trust me, most of these people aren't wearing these socks, right? They're just putting them on a mantle or whatever.
God. But you know what, Jesse, we could combine my croc charms with your socks, and we could push people to wear socks with Crocs and put the croc charms on them. That's a whole industry.
Just so
honestly,
you know,
a much higher ceiling than the comic market.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. What's funny is, just so you folks know this, I was the very first with the very first company to sell Crocs, and when they came on the floor, every salesperson said, there's no way I'm showing these. These are freaking stupid. And I said, you know what? You said the same thing about Uggs. You are going to bring out every Croc to every single customer.
But they didn't sell until Idiocracy. They didn't sell until Idiocracy bought a whole bunch of them dirt cheap to make all of the people in the future wear them.
Right. You will never know till you show it, I'm going to talk to Swag. I'm going to talk to Brian. We're going to get you some Beyond Wednesday, some Swaggle House socks as well in the future. Let's sock it out, make some money.
Before we call it a night, you guys, I want to remind everybody that you've got 2 days and 19 hours to get in on the Savage Rain coffin launch release from Brian Pulido. And for all you Lady Death fans out there, this is another perfect example of the smart, creators out there pivoting and seeing where everything is going. And I think Brian Pulido.
This isn't a Kickstarter. This is not a Kickstarter, folks. This is straight from Coffin Comics.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is. This is Brian Pulido's crowdfunding
yeah, we haven't said
site.
pivot in like 2 or 3 weeks either.
Yeah.
I said it 5 times during the show.
Yep.
Not today.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, you
I didn't hear you say pivot.
Whatever.
Audience, chat, did he say pivot?
Yeah, I
Pull
did.
out
You know what? I did say this at the beginning. I want to get this in at the end. I want to thank my biggest scar in wrestling. I was so ashamed of being a fan of this gentleman back in the day when he broke my heart and switched
Turned
over
heel.
to the bad guys, right? But thank you, John Cena, for becoming the ultimate bad guy of all time. I now can be a big fan of Sergeant Rock and never have to worry about it again.
That's funny. All right, you guys, make sure you guys go check out all these guys' sites, all these guys' YouTube channels, all these guys' stores. Show them some love. You know who they are. We'll see you guys tomorrow, Beyond Wednesdays, for the Wednesday Night Review Show. Hopefully Suspiria will be joining us. Come hang out with us. We'll see you soon. Adios.